Hi friends, if you like watching my videos, then be sure to subscribe to the channel, put a like, and do not forget to click on the bell. Enjoy watching! The guards discover two female figures trying to escape in the middle of the night. Miss Forrest and her subject were hit by a wave of fiery blows from the direction of the castle. Miss Forrest was hit in the back. She fell to her knees. The Marquis stood against the castle wall with his gun in his hands, his face grim and cold. Miss Forrest's companion looked up and could not understand how this man could shoot his own wife. The Marquis raised his hand upward, gave the command for another shot. A final wave of deadly blows struck the girls. She opened her eyes, saw the light of blue stars, and realized she was dead. Images from her past life flashed before her. She thought about how short and hard her life had been, how her husband had killed her after his declarations of love, how Nera, a woman traitor, had stolen everything she held dear, how her uncle had betrayed her while whispering in her eyes about loyalty. But she also remembered her mum smiling at her as a baby and reaching out to her. Tears streamed down her face. She couldn't believe her life was over. A bright flash, a flap of wings, and it was gone. She opened her eyes again. What is this street and houses, the noise of cars? Who are these people asking if her homework is done and calling her by her name, Baek Yeon-hwa? Everything she saw began to drift away. She was once again immersed in the cold light of the stars. These were memories of the past, of her past life. Birdsong, water dripping from her hair, him calling her Iris. Iris opened her eyes, unable to breathe. The sun was shining brightly. Leaning towards her in her wet clothes was a guy. Iris didn't have time to realize who he was before he kissed her. The guy sat down next to her, breathing a sigh of relief that she had come to her senses. Iris opened her eyes again when she was called by Rita and Sophie, her maids. They were excitedly calling for the teacher. Iris was sure she was dead, that she had been shot. But now she was in her room, raised up in bed, and found no arrow wounds on her. Sophie stood nearby, glad to see Mistress awake. Iris confessed to her that she didn't remember anything, to which Sophie explained that she had fallen into the water while out for a walk with Miss Finn. Sophie left the room to get the doctor. Iris was left alone in the huge bedroom. Getting out of bed, Iris took a small mirror in her hands. Looking at herself, couldn't understand why she remembered being shot in the back, why she felt no pain, felt much better than usual, and looked so young. Iris saw a yellow dress on the chair next to her and remembered wearing it when she was 20 years old. Her future husband had been walking by the river that day, and Iris had almost drowned, but Howard had saved her. Maybe it wasn't Howard and she was dreaming, but the anger and pain she felt couldn't just be a dream. Iris realized that she was back in time. Her old 26-year-old life was over, but now she would have to face again the people who had done so much hurt. There was a knock on the door. Iris was surprised when a green-eyed girl with red hair entered the room and called her name. It was Nera. When Iris was young, the Forrest family consisted of 4 people. Iris's mother was the sole heiress of the late Marquis Forrest. Her father, having married her mother, became the son-in-law of the Forrest family. Iris also had an older brother, Anakin, the son of Dad and his first wife. Iris's family was happy until her parents died. They fell into the water. The children were left alone. Since Anakin was not the direct heir to the Forrest family, the elders did not allow him to stay. Anakin disappeared one night, leaving Iris a note that he would return when he could protect her. Iris cried bitterly at being alone, but her Uncle Misa's family was there to help. Memories interrupted. Iris was back in her room. The maids Sophie and Rita and 2 other girls entered. Nera suddenly hugged Iris, while crying out how worried she was about her condition and not being able to sleep. Nera was Iris's cousin, Uncle Misa's daughter. Iris thought Nera was cute, as she had been everyone's favourite since she was a child. Iris had witnessed a scene in which the adult Nera had made a date and confessed her love to a boy named Riri. There was a scream in the room, and Nera's mother, Miss Michala, came in. Miss Michala began to accuse Iris of deception, after all. Cannot a person who almost drowned and did not wake up for a long time to look so healthy? Miss Michala was very cold-blooded. One day Rita opened the door of the mansion to find people beaten to death. Michala told Iris that Nera was more suited to be the Marquis's daughter, and that a silly girl like Iris should not be the head of the family. Iris tried to understand why her aunt thought this was a hoax, but Michala continued to accuse Iris of pretending and demanded a letter of recommendation for the test for the position of solitaire. Since Solia is the position of the queen's second hand, all girls wanted to become one. Nera was no exception and dreamed of taking the prestigious position. Iris said that she would not recommend Nera, but would instead take the test herself, even though she had never applied for the position before. Queen Lisa, for whom Solia was chosen, gave birth to the current emperor, was Earl Griffin's sister, and was like a grandmother to Iris. When Nehru was chosen by Queen Lisa, Iris was called a traitor and accused of poisoning the prince. She couldn't call letting it happen again. Nehru begged Iris to give up her position. As the head of the family, Iris can assist the queen, and Nera does not accept the entourage. She considers only an addition to Iris's society. Iris replied that Nera was insulting her father like that and could handle herself, then demanded everyone to leave the room. Michala reproached Iris in ingratitude because her uncle's family works, and Iris did not meet with difficulties living in wealth. Iris tried to bring her aunt into society, but the latter is sure that all the responsibilities have not been thrown on her. Iris orders Sophie to take her aunt's mother's seal. Since the work is too hard for Michala's aunt, Iris will do it herself because she only wishes her aunt happiness. Shivering with anger, Michala ran out of the room with Nera. She was angry with Iris and didn't understand how she could disobey her. In front of Sophie and Rita, Iris took the lenses, threw them away. Her mother had asked her to hide the real colour of her eyes, red, but Iris didn't want to live like that anymore. Looking out the window at her aunt and Nehru walking angrily, she decided to disobey from now on, to become just as mean and take her revenge 100-fold. A few days later, Nera looked at Iris standing at the window and thought about how she had changed. Iris had become strange, no longer wearing her lenses, no longer recommending herself for the position of solitaire, no longer giving in to requests, and as if pretending to be naive. Iris looked out the window and saw a guy standing in the street with a huge bouquet of red roses. It was Howard. He always brought red roses. His relatives insisted on courting him, but he didn't like Iris. The guy awkwardly complimented Iris, asked her how she was feeling, embarrassed that she was more beautiful than those roses. Howard said that no one had ever cared for him, so he easily fell into the trap that Nera had prepared for him. When Nera entered the room, she said that she had wanted to meet him for a long time, and Howard answered her in the same way. In his presence, Nera praised Iris and smiled innocently. Then Iris realized it wasn't a courtesy, not a friendly smile. Nera had wanted to take Howard away from her from the beginning. She imagined Nera taking everything she had from her, leaving Iris the Marquis's heiress with nothing. Iris walked over to Howard and shook a speck of dust off his shoulder with charm. Nera stood in the distance, surprised. Iris said she should have paid attention to Lord Griffin. Howard shuddered and was embarrassed, but in his thoughts he noted that Iris had never been as attractive as she was now. The past Iris wasn't the same, but Baek Yeon-hwa is different too. Now the memories of two people lurked in this girl. No matter how hard Nera tried to seduce, she remained a 20-year-old girl. For revenge, Iris must always be on Howard's side. She can't make the same old mistakes. Iris lowered her eyes and said embarrassedly to Howard that he was beautiful. How could he have chosen her? For Nera was so much prettier. The boy immediately objected. There was no one more attractive than Iris. He wanted to know more about her, to walk with Iris in the garden. Nera was angry and couldn't believe that her cousin could be so nice. Iris turned down Howard's offer. Instead of herself, she offered Howard Nehru for a walk. Howard was annoyed by the refusal and couldn't stop thinking about Iris. Meanwhile, Nera was happy to be alone with her cousin's fiancé. Sophie was worried that Iris no longer wore lenses, in case someone noticed her eyes. Now Iris was worried about that too. Howard's family dreamed of getting Iris as a daughter-in-law, for Nera would never become a solitaire, for she had no influence. She was sure it would be easy to attract him to her, and foolish Iris would never realize it. Looking out the window behind the couple, Iris was in thought. Her expression was cold, and Sophie noticed it. The maid realized that the Marquis might not like Iris's refusal, and Nera would take advantage of the situation and lure him to her side. Iris was distracted from her thoughts, smiled lightly, and replied that such treason could not happen. Iris hinted to Sophie that in this house, one should watch one's words, for they could be overheard, and that was very dangerous. When she asked Sophie if Howard and Nera had returned from their walk, Iris answered in the negative. She asked her to prepare a carriage for her. She had somewhere to go, and it was very important. Sitting in the carriage, Iris thought about how she had been betrayed by those she trusted, her uncle's family, her husband's family, Riza Huampi's aunt. If Iris can't get her revenge, then this life is in vain. It will be very difficult for her alone. She needs to find someone who will help in the confrontation. The carriage stopped, and Iris and Sophie found themselves in front of a modest but well-maintained building, rumoured to be an information trade. The building was run by Danny, the first banker on the continent, Edward Therio Opal, a genius recruiter, and Jan Valencia, the emperor's only son and heir to the empire. Iris needed to join these four to get support. Iris had told Sophie about where to find them, but it was just a rumour. Before going in, Iris warned Sophie that it could be very dangerous. Despite her fear and anxiety, Sophie stayed with her hostess. They entered. Entering the building, they found themselves in a fabric store. Iris saw Clanty, the girl who had once helped her, instead of getting money for stalking her. Clanty didn't understand why Iris was looking at her so intently. The dark-haired guy offered Iris some tissues. In response, Iris asked for tea, warm and strong. Everyone standing nearby was surprised. Those words were a password. Clanty opened the heavy curtains. Behind them was another room where Danny sat. Supporting his head with his hands, he asked Iris what information she needed. The information for her password was worth from 5,000 casters. Underneath the cloth trade was an organization of information traders. The real customers of the information room were high-ranking people who wanted to buy information if they could pay. To get information, you have to say a password, so Iris asked to be given warm and strong tea. Those words were the most secret password. Sophie was very worried. The usual salary is 100 casters a month, and this man wants 5,000. She asked Iris if she was really willing to spend that much money. But Iris had a plan. She could try to lower the price. Iris said she knew of those 4 people who could get any information. She reminded her of Danny's boyfriend, who would find out anything, but perhaps the information was so valuable because they didn't have it. Clancy was surprised. Danny calmly replied that their room was too overrated. Iris said she knew he was Danny, the boss of that room. Toth was greatly surprised at how she could know him. Iris realized she was good at haggling. But a handsome, blonde-haired boy entered the room. He asked where Iris had gotten all this information. Iris explained that each password fit a certain status. Since she was here, she could pay the price, and they should know who she was without explanation. Of course, they recognized Iris as Forest's heiress. Danny was very sad as soon as he saw her. Danny said she might be given the wrong information. Iris replied that trust is the only thing they base their work on, which is why she's here and trusts them. She asked that her request be accepted. Iris was asked why she had come to them. Iris realized that she couldn't talk about revenge, but what needed to be said, Iris couldn't think of anything to say. She shouted that Prince Valencia was against His Highness. Loud laughter erupted in the room. Iris continued the game by saying that it was a women's coalition. The blonde-haired guy assured that he would contact Iris after verifying the information. Not wanting to give up, Iris casually replied that she recognized Mr. Danny. The room was again filled with an air of surprise and incomprehension. The blonde guy asked Iris to leave, again assuring her that she would be contacted. Sophie and Iris got into the carriage and drove away. Left alone, Danny and the blonde guy discussed that the job they had been offered wasn't difficult. However, it was alarming how this Iris knew so much. Danny's identity had been revealed, but what could this girl do to them? They needed to check how much information had spread about them. The blonde guy was musing in his thoughts that his identity could be revealed too. If Iris got a little closer, he shouldn't give her information. Danny realized that this guy would save Iris at any cost. A lot of people might get hurt, but it was clear from the look in his eyes that he would help her. The hunch was confirmed. The blonde boy said he had to repay Iris, smiled and closed his eyes. He remembered the little girl with the red eyes and the mischievous smile. Danny looked at him, and couldn't understand what was in the mind of this guy, the Prince of Valencia. It had been several days since Iris had returned from the fabric store, and she hadn't heard from them, but Iris couldn't contact them herself. She hoped for the Prince of Valencia's cooperation. Revenge would come much faster. Sophie and Rita entered the room, bringing a package that said it was from a loved one. It was seeds and a bouquet of white roses. Anakin sent her this gift every year. The roses told her he was alive. The bouquet of roses, as always, was sent in honor of her parents' wedding anniversary. Iris wouldn't let go of her revenge plan. She must gather only trustworthy people. The maids noted how much more serious the mistress had become. Iris told Sophie that she had to find her brother. Since only one flower store had such flowers, they went there. The maids never ceased to be amazed at Mistress's activity. She was always amazing. They sincerely wanted to help Iris. At the flower store, the gardener told Iris that her flowers had been paid for by the fabric draper. Iris and Sophie were extremely surprised, not understanding why he would do that. The gardener also replied that Miss Clanty visits him often, and Danny was going to Madoka's auction house today. Since the auction house was not far away, the girls decided to go there. The auction featured gadgets that for the townspeople were evidence of magic. But Iris's memories kept two lives. She was not fascinated by laser pointers or other tools. She was looking for Danny. Since only knowing could get into the auction, Iris was afraid Danny wouldn't show up. But he was there, that guy from the fabric store. He recognized her and said hello. Iris also met the blonde guy from the fabric store. He was wearing a hooded cloak, surprised at Mrs. Forrest's presence. The auction started. The first item was the Sword of the Sky. The blonde guy promised to talk to Iris after the auction. She realized that these guys were here for the sword. The auction started. The people present were sure that the lot would go to Earl Moulton, who offered 7,500,000. The blonde guy bid 8 million. He won. There was an uproar in the hall. Danny shouting about bragging and unnecessary waste, and Sophie couldn't imagine giving away such a sum. Danny offered Iris something to buy when the last item was announced. The preface was long and rambling. The thing was found on the coast, a 200-year-old work by an artist. Danny grew bored with the chatter. Those present did not appreciate the lot, offering no more than 10 castaways. But Iris jumped in, knowing she must win, offering 100. Sophie expressed doubt, but Iris was sure she had chosen correctly. The thing Iris now wanted to buy was a smartphone. Iris didn't understand how a smartphone ended up in her world, if there was a person with the same memories as her. Even if Iris remembered how to create it, she wouldn't have the necessary technology and tools. The auctioneer called this item a bloody pack soul. The smartphone now belonged to Iris. Iris hoped the device was working, while Sophie lamented that the landlady had spent a large sum on an undignified item. The initials UN were on the phone. Checking that the smartphone was in working order, Iris opened the cover and discovered a battery rock. Danny, the blonde guy, and Sophie couldn't contain their surprise. Prince Valencia realized that this is a magic stone. Its owner dreams of becoming everyone. Without a provender, Iris will now be in danger. He asked to sell him the smartphone, ready to pay any price. Iris refused. The blonde prince voiced his concerns to her. Iris checked to see if the battery was working. Yes, she was having good luck this day. There were shouts from Sophie and others present. They called Iris a caster. Prince Valencia, looking at Iris now, was sure that she was cheating. After all, spellcasters were very rare. Iris realized she had attracted a lot of attention and headed for the exit. Sophie followed and didn't understand how her mistress knew how to use magic. At the exit, Iris was accosted by a blonde boy, for she had wanted to talk to them from the beginning. Apologizing that it was impossible to talk in such a situation, Iris left. At home, Iris was pleased with the purchase, while Sophie was worried. Iris explained to her that the palace would check out the auction house, and the excitement she'd gotten would help get Empress Lisa's attention. Iris assured her that Sophie needn't worry. What had happened would help her become a Solia. It would be helpful to pretend to be a spellcaster for a while. At night, Iris, after getting ready to sleep in her room, decided to check her smartphone. Pressing the power button, she couldn't wait to find out the phone numbers, the lock, if anyone was using it. After the greeting, she realized it was Korean. But in her world, people didn't know it, so they wouldn't be able to use the phone. Iris read a manual that said the information in the phone was for a discoverer who had fallen out due to one star breaking. Presumably, this person is from 2021 and wants to go back. The creator of the smartphone hopes that whoever is reading doesn't go looking for Park Yoon-ho at HU. Iris remembered that Baek Yoon-hwa died in 2021. In her past life, she had seen Park Yoon-ho on the news. He was the guy with the highest level of intelligence in history. Iris realized that he was the one who created this smartphone. The last note on the phone was made 60 years ago. The former owner of the smartphone waited 60 years for the day when the 3 phases of the moon would align, and he would return home, and he succeeded. In the world of Iris, he found a data transfer sphere, and now this phone can receive information from the year 2021. Iris found she could use the internet and important applications. Rita came into the room to clean up. She was upset. When Iris asked the reason for her bad mood, Rita said that Thompson, the servant she liked, had a girlfriend. Rita talked about the beauty of that girl, even though she was a beauty herself, but she denied it. Iris launched an app on her smartphone and asked Rita to look at the camera. Iris showed Rita what she looked like now and what she could look like if she took care of herself. Rita was out of her mind at this kind of mirror that stopped and stopped moving, figured the device was showing the future. Iris laughed. Rita promised now to start taking care of herself by all means, to become beautiful. Iris realized that they already had the best weapon in her revenge plan. The next morning, Iris had to study for her Solia exam. Instead of paper, she opened her smartphone notes. There are 2 empresses, Iria and Lisa. Iria of the great Sado clan had no children. Lisa became empress after she married a Claude. Things changed when she gave birth to Prince Louis. Howard became the successor thanks to his aunt's patronage. She had great influence in society. Iris knew that with the power of an empress, she had to become a solitaire. On the table was an invitation to a tea party, where Iris decided to go. Since there was no new outfit, she would wear her mother's dress. Michala was standing in the hallway on the 2nd floor. 2 maids were carrying out large boxes of Iris's mother's belongings under her direction. Irritated, Iris demanded that the things be put back, but Michala stood her ground and ordered her to continue putting them away. The maids obeyed Iris. At that moment, Michala thought, how dare this girl act like that, as brazen as taking her mother's seal from her. She thought Iris was really like her mother, arrogant, just pretending to be nice. Michala couldn't understand why she started ignoring her orders. Suddenly, Aunt Michala fell to her knees and began to sob, saying that she was suffering from disrespect at her age and that Iris despised her. The servants consoled Michala, but Iris looked down on her and did not believe a word she said. When the servants heard the commotion, they called to their uncle. Aunt Michala's well-known trick is to start complaining to her husband. Michala rushed to him and cried that Iris was angry about nothing. Iris said she wouldn't let him take things without her permission, and she only allowed her to take dishes for her aunt's parties. 2 more people appeared in the hallway, and Iris was glad for them. She wouldn't be able to resist fighting her uncle and aunt alone. Iris would have to be careful not to do anything unnecessary. Michala was indignant. Iris answered her that she could take what she wanted, but the things reminded her of her mother. The girl knew that victory was now on her side. In front of 2 bystanders, the uncle apologized to Iris for his wife's foolish act. He ordered Michala to apologize as well. Being angry, she didn't admit fault. After all, she was just taking clothes, albeit someone else's. Iris asked her uncle not to be so strict with Michala. Nervously clenching their fists, uncle and his wife left. Iris cleaned her mother's room with the maids. Finding a necklace with blue stones in the jewelry box, she remembered the eyes of that blonde boy the day she'd visited the fabric store. Michala's angry face was red as she thought about how Iris's behavior had changed. Taking away the seal, going out and talking to people more often, studying the financial audit and checking the cash book. The topic would need to be brought up at the next meeting. Outside, the 3 boys looked at Michala and her maids as she got into the carriage. They were uncomfortable. It seemed that Iris knew something, but it was clear that an ordinary 20-year-old girl could not possess important information. Iris saw them through the window and was surprised. A day later, Iris went to the exhibition. She had to check if the former owner of the smartphone, Yun-ho, was not a magician. Then there must be other earthly things. It was said that the smartphone appeared in the painting. She went to the painting Blood Tears by Sir Park. She was disturbed by a boy who offered to buy a pamphlet. Iris held it up to him and realized this was the noble's way of attracting watchers, since they couldn't bring them in person. Iris gave the boy a much larger coin. Pleased, he offered to take more pamphlets. Thanking her, the cute kid disappeared. Iris went on, guided by the leaflet. The worthy painting was in the center of the gallery. When she reached the middle hall, Iris saw a crowd of gawkers, noise and shouting. The boy with the flyers was accused of stealing. The prosecutor slapped the boy in the face. Iris wanted to intervene, but Sophie said that the boy had probably touched the nobility's property and could be in trouble. Iris remembered how sincere the boy was and couldn't stay away. Stepping out of the crowd, Iris ordered them to stop. Iris was surprised that the accuser was Count Burton. Iris remembered Count Burton from her past life. He had a bad temper, he had become Howard's friend, and had encouraged him to drink and gamble. Iris approached the boy, asking if he was all right. The Earl realized that Iris was a noblewoman, but thought she came from far away, for he had never seen her before. Burton loudly asked Iris why she had interfered, since the boy had stolen his money. Iris said that whoever she was, he should not hit the child. The boy, daring to say that the Count is lying, in fact he was accused because he knows that the Count's painting is a fake. Now no one will buy it. The aide to the garaf with the painting in his hands was aghast. The Count was angry. Why should he, the heir to Ronalaho, an honoured man, listen to the nonsense of a child? Iris noted that the word counterfeit made Burton angrier than stealing money. The boy said that he had seen this painting, Mother's Smile Sochi, before, and it was different from the current one. His grandfather was an artist. He was sponsored by a nobleman, and the painting was kept by his grandfather. To demands to reveal the nobleman's name, the boy said it was a secret and his grandfather had died a year ago. The Count again accused the boy of lying. Iris demanded to open the painting. After all, the gallery had been approved by the Empire itself, and if it was a fake, they wanted to deceive the Emperor and the citizens. The Count hurriedly tore the paper in anger, revealing the painting. Iris realized that had the painting been genuine, the man would not have behaved like this, sent the boy to fetch the guards. Burton grabbed Iris by the arms. She demanded to let her go, indignant at how a nobleman could deceive and accuse ordinary people. No sooner had the Count swung his arm to hit Iris, the guards arrived, led by a blonde guy with blue eyes. He introduced himself as Duke Valencia. The gathered crowd gasped at the Duke's appearance. Iris told him that Burton wanted to sell a fake painting. Since Valencia runs the galleries and did not want to create a ruckus, he suggested discussing what had happened in the study. Sophie took Iris's hand. The devoted maid worried about the coming trouble. In Valencia's study, Count Bertin excused himself that the boy had stolen the money, his face turning red as he lied. The Duke asked Iris what evidence there was that the painting was a fake. After all, she had only seen it for a few seconds. Iris asked for only an hour to find the evidence. An hour was given to her. Iris took out her smartphone and started searching for information about the painting. No one understood what kind of object it was, emitting light, with a sound coming from it after every touch. It can't be that thin if it's a magic stone inside. This girl must be a witch to use it with ease. Iris quickly found information, but it was not enough. She couldn't give up on this case, for she knew what kind of man Count Burton was. She must win with logic. Without obvious evidence, Iris began to explain. Iris said that in Sochi's era, most artists used oil paint, but Sochi used a special paint, tempera, to make the painting delicate. In this painting, the strokes are chaotic, whereas with tempera, they could not look that way. Count Burton blushed again, and began to justify that the chaotic strokes were due to the artist's fatigue. Valencia doubtfully clarified that the artist could ruin his painting because of fatigue. Iris clarified that Sochi is a role model for artists and is not pushy in his work. Burton was getting more and more sweaty and nervous. In his mind, he was going over his fears. Suddenly, Iris was an expert in painting, since she was so confident that she would provide proof within an hour. Suddenly she realized it was a fake in seconds, what the Duke of Valencia would do to him. On the pretext of the restroom, Burnett flew out of the study. Those present realized that Bertin had lied, and Valencia promised to punish him for his deed. The Count was also surprised at Iris's deep knowledge of art. After all, she is an extraordinary woman. Iris admitted that she was just improvising. The Duke asked to be left alone with Iris in the study. Iris thought about how much she wanted to ask and how long she had waited for this conversation. She needed to know where Anakin was and why there was still no news from those 4 guys from the cloth house, and why Burton was so afraid of that blonde guy with the blue eyes. Iris wondered if he was deceiving her, to which he replied that he'd never deceived her. Iris was the only one who mistook him for Danny and didn't recognize him for who he was. If anyone else had asked those questions, he would have pointed a knife at him, but he couldn't do that to Iris. He voiced his confidence in her deception, also suggested that the reason she's looking for the Duke of Valencia is because she's in love with him, that she went to those 4 guys for that reason, but she's only making the man uncomfortable. But Iris is so clever, just like she was today, and it was perfect. The blonde guy has asked for honesty from Iris if she wants honesty in return. He's willing to listen to her story, but if she hears all the answers to her questions, she won't tell him anything else. Iris set her teacup on the table, the most important clue she had gotten. The blonde guy was not Danny. With a smile, Iris left the office, told Sophie that they should go back, and she would look for another painting next time. Iris left, and Valencia stared after her, amazed at her ingenuity. The boy who was selling leaflets approached the Count. Apologizing, he said that they owed a great deal to this girl. The Count told him that the girl was the heiress of the Forest family and instructed him to deliver to her the original of the painting, Mother's Smile. Iris received the painting a few days later and was amazed. She realized it had been sent by the gallery owner, but she kept wondering who he was. Her thoughts were jumbled. If it wasn't Danny, then it was someone else close to the Duke of Valencia, one of his 4 friends. But it couldn't be the Duke himself. Iris decided not to jump to conclusions and wait for news. The situation with Karina showed her how her knowledge could be useful. Iris decided to distract herself from these thoughts for the time being and to get busy making cosmetics. Rita was surprised when the hostess asked her for a pot, a strainer, and a beehive. The maids did not understand how it was possible to make cosmetics out of a sieve and have the mistress do it, because it would hurt her hands. Iris appreciated the loyalty of her subjects and wanted to thank them. Iris doesn't have the ingredients to make lotion, but she can make lip balm. The news spread quickly among the maids that Iris wanted to make a lip balm. Rita brought all the necessary ingredients, and they set to work. Iris prepared and melted the wax, strained the honey from the beehive, and added red lip dye. After everything was ready, Iris instructed Rita to put the balm into jars and wait for it to harden. The subjects were eager to see how it worked. Iris called Sophie over and gave her the balm first, thanking her for all she does for her and for dying with her in her past life. Iris applied the balm to Sophie's lips. She looked radiant and received many compliments from her friends. Sophie noted that her chapped lips no longer hurt. Iris gave the balm to each of her maids. The girls were happy at her mistress's kind treatment. That evening, Sophie and her friend were walking through the streets of the city and discussing Iris's gift. A passing nobleman noticed a strange object in the maid's hands. Snatching the balm from Sophie's hands, he accused her of stealing it. He liked the smell of the balm. Interesting stuff. Despite Sophie's explanation that it was a gift from her mistress, the nobleman took it away. Promising to pay for the balm, the nobleman instructed the girls to come to him tomorrow. Sophie and her friend remained standing outside in indignation that they dared not say anything in defiance of this man because of his status. That same evening, when the nobleman returned home, his disgruntled wife was waiting for him. She knew that her husband would go gambling after she went to bed. As a gift, the nobleman presented his wife with a lip balm, saying that he had bought it specially. The wife was adamant and still angry. As the door slammed, his wife blurted out that they would sleep in separate rooms tonight. The man was lonely, alone, and didn't know how else to earn forgiveness. But in the morning, he saw a radiant and blossoming woman who had used his gift and forgiven him. My wife praised the balm because it has a great smell, and my lips are smooth afterwards. The balm was in another box. She had shared it with her friends, and there was only a little left. The nobleman was happy that he pleased his wife and could return to the common room. But his spouse asked him to buy more of this wonderful remedy. The next day, Mr. Felly's plan was to get more lip balm, for which purpose he went to Forest Manor. Other people, the husbands of her friends, also came for this purpose. Suddenly, a woman's voice asked them what they had forgotten in front of the reading room. Iris stood in front of them. The men started from afar by talking about the weather and offered to help with the books, but Iris realized they were here on business. The nobleman asked Iris for lip balm, perhaps something else left over. They didn't even realize they might get a refusal. Iris was annoyed at such insolence, voicing the assumption that the balm had been taken from her maids. Iris could not punish or raise her voice to these men. It would cause trouble. The mistress of the house rebuked that apparently these men could take gifts from their own parents as well. The men started to make excuses, but Iris realized they were confused. She reminded them of the meetings with the nobles, telling them that she would take up her work from next week. Viscount Hagus should be especially interested in this information. She was no longer the child she used to be. She was now an adult and would begin to rule. The nobles were confused, but still asked for balm. Iris said there was nothing for them, and she would reimburse her subjects for what had been taken away. Instead of making more balm, she would read books, as these men had once advised her to do. Iris was gone, and they were left with nothing. The next day, Rita came running into the room, holding a catalogue from a fabric store. Iris went urgently to the store. On the way, she reasoned that people without a title couldn't stop her. If she needed to change her life, she had more important matters to deal with. As she entered the store, Iris told the blonde guy with blue eyes that she needed to get closer to her 4 friends, even though she didn't know who they were. The guy motioned for her to sit down. Iris kept wondering if he thought she was dangerous, and asked for information about Anakin. The blonde guy held out an envelope. As she reached for the envelope, Iris stopped suddenly. She apologized for her haste, for she might have offended him. But even if she was too demanding, she hopes that this guy still will not refuse the request. The guy was amazed. The girl is so bold, her eyes are burning, but she is worried about his feelings. The blonde guy reassured Iris that he would fulfill her request. He said that Iris was beautiful, and he prioritized beauty, whether it was external or internal. Iris was worried why he was suddenly talking about beauty, since it had nothing to do with the case. The boy explained to her that she was beautiful because she had no violent thoughts. When Iris opened the envelope, she saw a check. Her down payment had been returned to her, as wanting to meet her 4 friends was not a real request. He asked not to look for them, since they were all in town and would meet her soon. Iris explained that she was misunderstood. She had another purpose, but suddenly went silent. She thought about why this guy, after telling her about the 4, was still keeping his identity a secret. He promised that Iris would get answers to all her questions tomorrow. He would contact her himself. Iris asked to accept the contribution because she was very grateful, but the guy refused because the information came easily to him. Instead of money, the blonde guy talked about help. He expressed his desire that if he was in trouble, Iris would be obliged to help him. Realizing that this obligation might bring the meeting with the 4 friends closer, Iris replied that she was ready to help at any time and left. Bella Michala, before her marriage, was one of the heiresses of the family estate ruled by the nobles of the remaining family. Her parents were intelligent and Michala knew no need for anything. However, she was dissatisfied with her life. There were no jewellery or treasures in the stock of the house. Although Michala was the prettiest in her village, she knew that there were much prettier girls in the capital. She dreamed that one day everyone would bow to her, and the only way to do that was through a successful marriage. At the age of 18, she married the son of a viscount, not much higher in status than her, and a year later she gave birth to a daughter. The next 20 years of her life with her husband were tedious and boring, but everything changed when Iris's father and mother died. Michala and her husband received the Forest family inheritance, but that didn't make them happy. Michala cheated on her husband with other men, and he flirted with younger women. Michala hoped that her young lover was in love with her. But one day he asked her for a lot of money, ostensibly for his sister's wedding, because he was very worried about it. Michala agreed and was ready to do anything he asked. But the guy had a plan, to take as much money as he could and then break off the relationship. On the day of Queen Lisa's gala, Iris looked beautiful in her new dress. Her maids complained that the dress looked like a birdcage and must be difficult to move in. But that was the style of the current empire, and Iris accepted it. She wore a dress with a crinoline to attract Queen Lisa's attention. Michala sat alone in her residence, unable to forget the recent situation with the dresses. She was angry with Iris and could not forgive the humiliation she had suffered. Her subjects came in and reported that Miss Forrest was going to Queen Lisa's gala. That means Iris is applying for the position of solitaire. Michala instructed her 2 maids to visit Forrest's residence, where they bribed the maid Iris. The girl was working for Forrest to save up for her wedding. Once she had that money, she could soon return to her fiancé and buy a house in her hometown, so she agreed to give up the key to the room with the dress. On the day of Queen Lisa's reception, Iris was excited. It was her first time out in public. She planned to attract the Queen's attention that day, but she had to stay calm. Suddenly she was called by Howard. He was smiling but irritable, probably because of Iris's several refusals to meet her. He said he couldn't miss Iris's first outing and offered her a drink. Iris realized that after alcohol she would stop thinking so sensibly and refused to drink. Howard insisted. Iris was afraid to offend him by refusing because his mother could cause trouble, but she didn't know how to avoid the situation yet. A voice sounded, asking for the drink Iris offered for herself. Turning around, she saw a blonde boy with blue eyes. Howard bowed to him, greeting Your Highness. Iris finally realized that the one who helped her, who promised to answer all her questions, was Count Valencia. Howard asked if this was the first time Iris had seen His Highness and introduced them to each other. The people around them were discussing her appearance. There was a rumor that she didn't leave the house because of her illness, and her uncle's family attended all the events on her behalf. But Iris didn't care about their opinions. Her heart was jumping out of her chest. Iris explained to Valencia that she hadn't been out since she was grieving the death of her parents, and had only recently dealt with her feelings. His Majesty sipped the drink and inquired why Howard had wanted to make her drink. Confused, Howard replied that he wanted to show Iris a real celebration. Queen Lisa appeared and welcomed Count Valencia. He said he had come to keep the king company, for he looked bored. The queen was indignant why the king had summoned an outsider and not a pince-nez. Valencia replied that he was a blood relative, and she dared not call him a stranger. The queen turned to Iris and noted that they had not met before. Iris bowed. The queen remembered that the Forrest family was the only one not vying for the throne, but has a thriving thievery and corruption. The queen wanted to marry her nephew Howard to Iris to become a marquis. This would ensure the queen's support. Queen Lisa praised Iris's outfit. The dress had an unusual look, and the puffy skirt made her waist look even slimmer. Iris confessed that she had made the dress herself for the sake of meeting Her Majesty, and was glad that she liked the crinoline. The queen was flattered. Watching them from the side, Valencia couldn't believe that Iris wanted to be the queen's henchwoman, didn't understand why she was looking for her or what she was up to. From afar, a man in a grey cloak nodded to him and disappeared. At that time, Queen Lisa invited Iris to sit beside her at the ceremonial table. At the same time, at the carriage, Sophie exposed a bribed maid. This girl was supposed to give Iris a package with a shard of glass, but she blabbed about the Viscountess's errand. Sophie forced her to tell the truth and saved Iris. At the feast table, the queen asked Iris if the dress had a design, but Iris replied that she had made it herself. Iris realized that thanks to Howard and Count Valencia, she had attracted the queen's attention and would now be able to leave a strong impression. The other girls at the table looked at Iris with envy because it was so hard to get the queen's attention, and they were now being ignored. Queen Lisa noted that Iris could hold any conversation. She was charming. One of the girls offered the queen the news that Miss Forrest was rumoured to be a magician. The girls started discussing that a magician had appeared in the auction house, but people said that the magician was the head of the Forrest family. Iris smiled enigmatically. She realised that with a smartphone and memories of her past life, She could very well be a mage in the sense that people in her world put into that word. Iris did not comment on these rumours, but promised that she would explain everything another time. She still had family matters to attend to. The Queen's maid said that Iris's maids were looking for her. Apologising, Iris hurried away. The Queen remained interested and invited Iris to another meeting. Iris saw Rita questioning the bribed maid. Rita and Sophie told the mistress that the girl wanted to spoil her dress on the Viscountess's assignment. Iris decided that in return for punishment, the girl should go to serve in Michala's house and report everything that happens there to Iris. Michala's maids at her estate reported to her all that had happened at the feast. Now Michala knew that Iris had spent the evening in the company of the Queen, who was interested. The Queen had asked Iris for a new appointment. The maid had failed to spoil Iris's dress, and Michala must now employ her. Nera witnessed the conversation and didn't understand how silly Iris had attracted the Queen's attention and how her mother had failed to carry out her plan. Nera intervened and told her mother that the new maid wanted to start work immediately, because no matter what they decided, their family would be gossiped about. Sitting in the living room, Iris thought she should take a chance and break off her relationship with her uncle's family. It was during this time that Michala's lover asked her for money, and a year later, he stole her diamonds and ran away. Her aunt revealed the family vault to him, which also contained land deeds and contracts with nobles. Iris also recalled that she had kept this aunt's story a secret in the past, had given her money when she asked for it, but her aunt had forgotten her kindness the very next day. The man who stole the money was just a mercenary. Iris thought she might be the one to steal the money. Soon, Iris received a message from the maid who had been sent to Michala's house. Iris was surprised that the girl got the information so quickly. Apparently, she was really afraid of punishment for her deed, or her aunt was too spoiled. Iris decided to go to the place mentioned in the letter the next day. At the Viscount's house, Uncle Misa was angry with his wife, trying to find out where she had spent 800 kessel. Michala made excuses that she didn't know where the money had gone. Misa said he knew she had been selling Forest family jewellery. How he could have known about it was a mystery to Michala. She realised that her lover had told her husband. Michala was out of her mind. How could he betray her after all? But if her husband had treated her well from the beginning, if he had loved her, she wouldn't have cheated and wasted his money. She hated him. Michala ran away in tears, and Misa called her crazy afterward. After a quarrel, Michala came to the farm to see her lover. The guy did not expect a meeting and was surprised, but Michala insisted. She told him about the quarrel with her husband and asked him if he missed her. Michala talked to him about the money she had taken to his house. Iris and Sophie, who were standing nearby, witnessed their conversation, as well as their hugging and kissing. This information was relayed by the maid. Iris realised that this man was spending her aunt and uncle's money. After finding out everything they needed to know, Iris and Sophie left. After a while, Iris showed up at the fabric store. She was greeted by Danny, wondering why she had come, after all her order had already been placed. Danny was nervous in Iris's presence. She already knew their identities. Did she want to cause them problems? He felt she was to be feared. Iris said that she had figured out his identity, because who else but Danny could be so friendly with Duke Valencia, and he was also the one who was a cheapskate at the auction, not wanting to spend extra money. Seeing his reaction to her words, Iris only confirmed her guess. Danny realised the danger of the situation. If the Queen found out, Valencia would be in trouble. Danny thought about what to do and wanted to report her to the guards. Iris said that she now knew of Danny's weakness, and he fell to his knees and begged her forgiveness. Iris said she came here on another matter. She needed 2 people who were skillful at their jobs. Danny suggested the employees of his store for the job. The workers didn't like the idea, thinking that the owner treated them like commodities and that they should take revenge on him for this act at the first opportunity. Iris told the staff about Michala's lover, Gale. The staff were to sit at his table and tell him that there were untold riches in the vault of the Viscount's house. Iris hoped that when he heard about the riches, he would steal the agreements and letters along with the jewellery, as he had done in his previous life. The workers asked why they should do it, and not Miss Forrest's maids, to which she replied that they were the only people who would keep it a secret. The workers said they had no idea of the lady's cunning, though they did not know what it was all for, but were surprised that Miss Forrest was capable of creating such traps. After these words, Iris thought about it. She didn't even suspect that she was trapping someone with her actions. Her conscience was clear. She just wanted to get back everything that belonged to the Forrest family, and that had been taken away by those despicable people. She also realized that she was only just beginning her revenge. Iris's hired workers followed to the place where Gale was having lunch. As they sat down at the table next to him, the man and woman began to discuss loudly the treasures in Michala's and the Viscount's hiding places. Iris watched them through the window and realized that Gale was interested in what they were hearing. Everything had gone smoothly. People never change. When Iris returned home, she heard a noise. Rita ran out and said that she was in the Viscountess's house. Iris entered the room and saw Michala scolding Sophie, who was on her knees beaten and being held by Michala's maids. Michala took a swing at Sophie, but the lady of the house stopped her. Iris asked her aunt how she could allow herself to do such a thing, to which her aunt replied that the maid was mocking her, because not so long ago, her mistress had humiliated her because of the situation with the dresses. Rita said that Sophie was protecting Iris's mother's jewellery that Michala wanted to take. Iris kicked her subjects out the door. Sophie, Michala, and her two maids remained in the room with her. The Viscountess slandered Sophie, saying that she had gone mad and that Iris could not control her. Iris interceded, saying that Sophie was doing a good job. Iris and Michala had a quarrel, in which Michala accused her of impertinence, youth, and stupidity, because her parents, like her, did not know their place. Michala said that she should teach the maid a lesson, to respect those who are higher in status. Iris responded to her words by slapping two of the Viscountess's maids. Michala did not expect such a response, and was startled. Iris said that the two had broken the rules without her permission, that she would not allow her maid to be forced to kneel. Michala was furious, promising revenge. Iris called out to Rita. The mistress of the house ordered her aunt's maids to be handed over to the guards because they had entered her house without permission, and her aunt herself to be escorted to the gate. Screaming, the Viscountess left. Iris and Rita approached Sophie. She was beaten, and blood was trickling from her leg. Despite everything, Sophie said she was fine. Iris felt guilty because the people she loved were suffering. Sophie said that in the past, Iris had only cried and hid, but today it was different. Sophie said that she was proud of her mistress, that she had become kind and strong. She had the courage to face her aunt face to face, so it wasn't her fault. Sophie remembered how she was an orphan, and Iris, having lost her parents, had taken her in. It was Iris who had trusted her, allowed her to experience warmth and love. Sophie wanted to repay the favour, and all she could do now was to keep the necklace with the red stone, even though her mistress did not know yet that it could change her life. The next day, Misra and Michala had a conversation within the walls of the Viscount's residence. The Viscountess said angrily that she would not keep silent and tolerate it, for her dignity had been violated. Misa forbade his wife to help the arrested maids, for it was good that only a few maids had been hurt. The Viscount told his wife that if she considered herself a mistress, she should behave accordingly, not cause trouble and stay at home quietly. Misar's business was on the verge of ruin, and he wanted to ask Iris for help. The Viscount left with a slammed door. Michala thought of Gale, because he could make up for the pain her husband had caused her. The Viscountess happened to look out the window and saw her lover talking sweetly with two maids. Furious, she came up and demanded that he follow her, for there was work for him to do. Stepping aside, Michala slapped Gale. She warned him not to look at other women, since he was all she had. Gale consoled the Viscountess by saying that his only relationship with girls was work, but she didn't believe him. Gale tried to be sweet and convincing. As he hugged Michala, Gale remembered the conversation he had overheard at lunch. After the conversation, he knew that Michala was insanely rich, with jewellery and property documents in her secret vault. All he had to do was find out where the vault was, then he could rob it and escape, leaving the annoying woman behind. A few days later, Iris was standing outside the upscale hotel where Danny had been scheduled to meet. Iris was escorted to the required room. She heard voices. In the next room, Danny revealed to Gale that he knew of his affair with the Viscountess and demanded he leave town or be mauled by lions. Back in Iris's room, Dani said her request had been honoured. Auntie's lover had agreed to leave as soon as he sensed danger. Iris took out a bag of coins and thanked Dani for his excellent work and left. Duke Valencia entered the room. Iris bowed, and he motioned for her to sit down. Count Valencia noted that when Iris didn't know about his title, she was more relaxed and friendly, but now she was as serious as a doll. Iris thought about how she couldn't be kind because she had been betrayed by her own family, and how could she trust this man, a complete stranger? Looking at Valencia, she remembered that in a previous life, men like him had been her ideal, the heroes of love novels, a handsome and attentive man with excellent manners. But how could she think of him now when she knew she had been betrayed by her husband? Iris asked what she owed the Duke's visit. Valencia said that while he was thinking about why a 20-year-old girl wanted to get rid of her family and looked so tense, he remembered her. Iris also remembered the young man who had saved her by pulling her out of the lake. It was Duke Valencia. Regarding the question about family, Iris replied that he was wrong. All his words were fiction, and if those were all the questions, she didn't have an answer for them. Valencia realized that nothing Miss Forrest would tell him until she was completely trustworthy. Moving on to the next question, he wanted to know if it was true that Iris was a mage. Iris remained silent, and the Duke said he would take her silence as an affirmative answer. Iris was uncomfortable and wanted to leave. Valencia reminded her of his promise to do any favor in exchange for information. Iris asked what he wanted from a simple noblewoman like her. Valencia suggested that Iris go out with him. Iris wondered why he did it. Was it because she was a mage, or did he need something from the Forrest family? To which the Duke replied that a man in love doesn't need a reason to declare his love. Iris said she had heard that the Duke was to be betrothed to a princess from another country, the Marquess of Commandy. Valencia replied that Iris had fallen in love with him. He remembered her from his childhood, but now she was so mature. People can hate what they love and love what they used to be indifferent to. The Duke had told Iris that she would love him even though she didn't like him now. It was an extreme degree of arrogance on his part. Iris didn't like his words. Without giving an answer, Iris left the room. Deciding that he was just teasing her, she walked away. Dani heard the whole conversation. Out of breath, he went to the door behind where the Duke was. Dani stormed into the room and expressed his outrage to the Duke. He said he had heard Valencia confess his love to Iris, if all he was doing was in love. Dani has known Valencia for a long time and knows that he does everything for profit. He has said such confessions to many women before. These poor girls fall for him because of his beauty and eloquence. They don't even realize he's a hypocrite. Dani reminds the Duke that his main goal is to become king, but his uncle is in that position, and the heir is Prince Louis. Miss Forrest is chosen to marry Queen Liza's nephew. Getting close to Iris is dangerous with problems. The current king has chosen Valencia to be his successor, but if he joins his life with Iris, all plans for the throne will be ruined. The king has asked Duke Valencia to keep a low profile and stay hidden for the time being. Marriage to the Marquess of Commandy would give the Duke more power. If Valencia chooses Iris, all the plans Dani has made will fall apart. The Duke calmly listened to Dani, raised his hand and slapped him. He dared not tolerate such behavior. Dani was furious. The Duke didn't care about this tantrum. He ordered to bring the results of the Michala family's investigation. Dani was not ready to put up with this course of action, promising to stop this love affair. In her chambers, Michala was with Gale, who looked hurt. Michala tried to find out what the reason was. He said that he was pathetic, that he felt unwanted and suffered a lot, and that it would help him a lot if he and Michala revealed their deepest secrets to each other. Michala wanted to prove her love and offered Gale a necklace as a gift. He refused. Gale knew he would get something more valuable than a necklace. The lover offered to elope together, and for Michala it was a confirmation of his love. Michala refused. She was afraid to go back to that life again. His all humiliated her. Gale stood up haughtily and said that he intended to end the relationship before he fell even more in love. The Viscountess rushed after him, begging him to stay. She was ready to do anything to make him believe her. Gale, too, was willing to do anything to get the treasure. In exchange for his love, he demanded the best-kept secret. Michala told him that if you follow the forbidden road on Halter Mountain for 10 minutes, you can find their family hiding place. Gale was going to check it out and then commit the robbery. Iris, Sophie, and the fabric store employees find the Forrest family vault. I can't believe how much her relatives had stolen. Iris had her assistants take the jewellery to the information department carriage. In addition to the jewellery, Iris found documents. The deeds to her house, which her uncle's family had altered and given her a fake, Iris's will, which she had not written, were found. It stated that in the event of her death, all property would go to the Viscount. Iris called Sophie and told her to warn the other aristocrats about it. Iris understood why they wanted her to marry Howard. If she died unmarried, Uncle Misra would be under suspicion. Uncle chose Howard to cover for him when Iris dies. They won't be able to ruin her life because of their greed, but they wanted to do it from the beginning. Uncle's plans changed after Nera became pregnant. It was the fruit of her affair with Howard. It was a good thing for her uncle, because with a title higher than Marquess, Nera would consolidate her power and provide support for her family. Iris clenched her fists in anger, and Sophie noticed her tension. Sophie asked what the reason for the change in her mistress was, whether it was because she had learned how she had been cheated. Sophie was very eager to help. Iris instructed her to move the jewellery to another location. She didn't trust Danny, so she wanted to hide them. Iris left fake rocks in the vault for bait. Miss Forrest's plan is for Gale to escape, but he'll come back here to get the money. She has also left a bag of letters. He will no doubt take them, after which they will have to be restolen from him. Gale will live in fear that Michala's husband wants revenge. Iris and her assistants have returned home. During the night, Gale was supposed to come, and he did. As expected, he took what was left in the vault. In the meantime, Michala had received a note telling her of Gale's treachery and theft. Going to the vault, the Viscountess found that there was nothing left there. Later, Iris was in her house picking out her outfit for the meeting with the Queen using her smartphone. She found information that after the Empire-style dresses that were fashionable in her world, the romantic style would come. You also need to follow the latest trends and wear a crinoline that the Queen liked. Michala burst into the room screaming for help. She realised that her aunt knew about the deception. Also, the information department informed Iris that the letters were stolen from Gale, after which he was lowered off the ship. Everything was going according to plan. The aunt fell to her knees in front of Iris and begged for help. She remembered how, in her previous life, Iris had begged in tears for her aunt to help Sophie, but had been refused. Now Iris coldly refused her aunt, citing lack of time. Michala said that if her husband killed her, it would be Iris's fault. Miss Forrest said there was no need to dump everything on her and walked out. From that day on, the Viscountess was irritable. One day, Iris arrived at Michala's residence. Rita said that Iris needed to check the basement. There, Iris discovered Tata and her grandson. Tata is the maid who raised her mother back in the day. Now they were locked in the basement as they were disturbing the Viscountess. Tata said that it was all her own fault. Iris replied that she was trying to be brave and wanted to change the lives of her subjects so that the fates of their children would change too. Tata didn't understand what Miss Forrest was talking about, but the lady promised to protect them since they couldn't do it themselves. Iris may be so easy to talk about because she's always been a noblewoman, but she remembers Park Yon-hwa's other life and knows that nothing will change for people who like their lives. Iris asked Sophie to bring the Viscountess. Angry Michala entered. She thought of Iris's arrogance, that she should get what she deserved. Iris was sitting at the table, but she did not offer her aunt a seat, which made the Viscountess furious. She rebuked her niece for behaving like that to her aunt. Michala was very worried. Iris replied that her aunt had never treated her like a niece, and if she wanted something, she should stand on the stakes and ask for it. Michala reproached Iris for not being able to sleep well after humiliating her aunt, but she was afraid that Iris would destroy her. Iris says she knows their family's plan, knows they are counting the days until she is murdered. How can she, after the murder plan, ask Iris for help? Iris told Michala not to think that after stealing her wealth, her sins would go unpunished. The Viscountess didn't understand how Iris knew about the plan, but lunged at her after she realized her lover had betrayed her at Iris's prompting. Michala screamed that she would tell her husband everything, but Iris knew that wasn't going to happen. Her aunt values her life, but if she told everything, Michala would kill her first. Michala started saying that Iris is as two-faced as her mother. She looks down on people, pretending to be kind. It is right that her mother died. Unable to bear the insults, Iris slapped Michala, told her not to be insolent, not to humiliate the servants, and not to come to her house to make a mess. Uncle Misa and Nera came in. The uncle asked what his wife had done again. Michala rushed to her husband, pushing Iris away. She screamed that Iris wanted to kill her, that she frightened her. Iris threatened her and hit her. The uncle asked Iris if everything that was being said was true. Nera realized that Iris couldn't lie now, because there were so many witnesses, and she had lost her mind. Michala's thoughts were only to take revenge on Iris for her deed, and to prove it by presenting her face with the mark of the blow. Iris confirmed that she had hit her aunt, only defending herself as she grabbed her by the hair. Michala hadn't expected this, but Iris continued. She asked if her aunt wanted to tell her about the secret vault, about asking for money, and then accused Iris of stealing the stash. Michala realized that her family must not find out the truth, or she would be kicked out. For Nera, the information about the vault was news. Was there really so much treasure there that her mother needed to ask for money? Michala had never told her daughter where it was before, explaining that they lived in the capital, and the vault was far away, and it would take a long time to tell her how to find it. Iris said that her aunt couldn't lie to her, and suddenly fell down on purpose, as if she felt sick. Misa apologized to Iris for the scene she had witnessed, which must have made her feel bad. He suggested that Iris go to rest. When the Viscount's family was left alone, Misa lashed out at his wife, saying that he did not believe her words, that she had stolen everything, the jewelry, the letters, and the will. Michala tried to justify herself, to stop her husband's anger. Misa grabbed his wife and started shaking her, trying to get information from her. He asked her what she was up to and where she had hidden everything. Michala said she didn't know about anything, but in her head she was thinking how Iris had managed to pull it all off, how she stayed calm, knowing about the will. Misa threw his wife on the floor and walked out. When the Viscount sent a subject to check the hiding place, the information about the robbery was confirmed. Nera suggested her father make another will. She would find someone in the capital who could forge Iris's signature. Misa replied that first she should check if Iris was lying, because she had changed a lot lately. A day later, Misa and Nera decided to question Iris's maids about what really happened. But Iris had anticipated it. Her maids said that the Viscountess had extorted money from the miss, pestering her while Iris had been kind. The girls said they saw the Viscountess hit Iris. A week later, Rita told Iris that after that incident, Michala was kicked out of the estate, one of the maids she had beaten badly. Iris asked Sophie to leave the two of them alone. Sophie revealed that the Viscountess had been hurraying for money and might now try to hurt Miss Iris. Iris was sure that until Misa made a new will, which would take time, he would protect her and Iris would be safe. Despite this, Sophie was very worried about her mistress. That same night she was writing a letter addressed to Anakin. In the forest at night, Anakin did his job, taking out the ill-wishers. He gave one wounded man the choice to wait 4 days for help and watch his wounds fester, to escape now and be captured by the knights, or to die quickly and painlessly. A blonde guy with blue eyes appeared out of the darkness and stabbed the wounded man in the heart with a sword. Anakin asked who he was. The guy introduced himself as Ian, saying he was a man who did good with an open heart. Ian came to find out what Anakin had told Dany. In response, he received an accusation from Anakin that Ian had not kept his promise. Anakin received a letter from Forest Manor. In exchange for Anakin getting rid of people in this man's path, he was to protect his sister, Miss Forest. But Ian replied that he promised nothing but money. Anakin grabbed Ian, asking him taunted by the latter. Anakin's subordinate ran out of the darkness, saying that Ian was Count Valencia, the Emperor's heir, and hurting him would be treason. Valencia said that Anakin shouldn't be angry with him, since he was paying him. Anakin angrily asked why his sister was in danger and Valencia could not protect her. Valencia replied that it was impossible to protect a man who had rejected his love. Anakin was outraged that Iris had been left to fend for herself while the Michala family pursued her. Count Valencia replied that there was nothing he could do. If he told Iris about her uncle's betrayal, there was nothing she could do to change it. When she went to the news agency, Valencia helped her, but she pushed him away. He is unable to do anything since Iris wants to marry Howard. Intending to protect Iris would only lead to the Earl's enmity with Queen Lisa, which would increase the hatred. Iris's honor will be hurt if Valencia competes with Howard. The king wants to give the throne to Valencia, but may change his mind in case of conflict. Valencia could not lose such a strong supporter as the king, or all his efforts would be in vain. Valencia said he could only keep an eye on Iris and would only protect her when she was in real danger. Anakin agreed that it was his duty to protect his sister, but he doesn't have enough strength. To return to his family, he needs the support of the southern region, and to do that, he needs to take part in the war in the south and win. Anakin knew that Iris was suffering at the hands of the Viscountess, but he had no idea that his uncle wanted to kill her. Anakin made the decision to be strong now, surrender the war and return to Lowenheim with Duke Valencia, for it is now that Iris needs protection. That is the most important thing to him. To his subjects, Anakin ordered them to find Michala and throw her out to another country. At Forest Manor, Rita said that Michala disappeared on her way to her hometown after being exiled. There were rumors that she might have died. Iris said that such a woman could neither die so easily nor disappear without a trace. We'll have to find out the truth from the news agency. But now Iris wanted to please the maids and offered to bake cakes. Rita whipped the dough until her hands were tired. Iris showed her how to do it properly so that she would get less tired and the mixture would rise faster. Sophie was glad that the mistress had such a hobby, but she felt awkward because it was the maid's job. After the cakes were ready, they were divided among all the female employees. The girls were delighted with Miss Forrest's culinary skills. Each time they looked forward to seeing what Iris had prepared for them. Iris asked them to wrap up a brownie for her to take with her and said she had to go. Sitting in the carriage, Iris thought about the fact that she had met 2 of her 4 friends, Danny and Ian. There were 2 more to meet, Terrio Opal and Rue Morgan. Iris decided that this time she had to win Terrio Opal's trust. Terrio Opal was the greatest of sages. As early as 6 years old, he had made a steerable carriage toy that could be controlled from a distance. It remained priceless to this day. Iris was greeted and escorted to the study. On the way, the girls discussed the handsome red-eyed man, and Iris thought of her brother. Iris was led to an office with all 4 friends gathered outside the door. She was told that all meetings would now be held in this room. As Iris entered, she saw Duke Valencia, Danny, Rue Morgan, who had dropped something, and Terrio Opal, who was eating a cookie. Iris introduced herself to the strangers. Ryu Moran was the first to say hello and offered to sit down. Then Terrio Opal, who looked like a child, said hello while munching on a cookie. This foursome had a disposition and were very noisy. Iris would never have thought that the people who ran the city could be so eccentric. Valencia apologized for the remarks of her friends, who at that moment were discussing bad appetizers and that a new chef should be hired. Iris knew that Rue Morgan was sensitive with women and people of age. He couldn't hide his feelings, and he could be trusted. Danny was money-conscious and picky. Iris had heard about Terrio Opal, that he was unpredictable, a true genius admired by mages all over the world, even though he was just a child. Valencia, aka Ian, he was someone Iris couldn't trust yet. Iris handed her friends a bag. Danny thought it contained money, but Iris explained that he was wrong. The bag smelled delicious. Looking in, all 4 of them saw the cakes. They were like from another world. Terrio loved treats. After tasting the cakes, he appreciated Iris's culinary skills. Ryu Morgan reminded Terrio that he should say thank you. Ryu explained that Terrio rarely left his room due to certain circumstances, so he hadn't learned good manners. Iris was glad that the cake was to Terrio's liking. Looking at the red-haired Terrio, Iris thought about how he was more of an outlier than a person who didn't know manners. Also, Iris heard that Terrio's parents kept him locked up. Did they cut him off from society on purpose, to benefit from his talent? Iris told Terrio to take his time eating and wash it down with milk. Next time she would bring more cakes. Terrio said that Iris was good, and Iris saw the same in him. Ian was watching them. He knew that Terrio could not be fooled. He could sense who was with him for profit, and Iris had managed to tame him. That meant Iris wasn't going to use him. Jan asked what reason she had for wanting to see the 4 friends. Iris showed a blueprint of a device, calling it a magical instrument she would like to ask Sir Opal to make. This instrument would be able to create candles, lenses, and even cosmetics. Terrio was very interested in the blueprint. Iris said that was all the requests for today, asked to ask for their help some other time, bowed, and left. Ryu thought that this girl had good energy. He had never seen Jan look at a girl like that before. At this time, Ian opened the pantry door. Behind it stood Anakin. Ian asked what it was like to watch his sister from afar. Anakin thought back to when he and Iris were children. He had sworn to protect his sister, but he still wasn't strong enough. Iris thought her smartphone was a real magic wand. Rita stood nearby and asked if the artifact was really a treasure. She explained that artifacts were items that only magicians could activate. Rita told about Yunho McCartney's treasure, which was called a laptop. Iris was amused to hear Rita describe a spirit living in a laptop that made a tune. From this, Iris realised that she would have to contact the McCartney house. The conversation was interrupted by Sophie. She asked Rita not to bother her mistress with this talk, so that the estate wouldn't find out that she was a magician. Sophie worried that even though Iris was a mage and it would help rebuild the clan, it would also be a lifelong burden on her. Sophie asked not to listen to Rita as she was gathering rumours. Iris asked for a carriage and went to the celebration for the second Solia exam. At the first selection for the Solia, the girls' papers were checked. Although there was little left of the Forest family, they were one of the 3 marquis in the country, so Iris passed the selection. Approaching the palace, Iris saw the Commandi family's carriage, but after all, Lady Commandi didn't pass the first exam. Why did she come? Iris and her maids entered the palace, with girls whispering around them. The girls were talking about Iris, discussing the news that she could be from the Forest family. All eyes on Iris, Rita was worried, but her mistress remained calm. At the far end of the hall stood Lady Marianne Commandi. Iris noted the hostile look in Marianne's eyes as Miss Nera stood beside her, calling to her. Sophie told Iris of her speculation that by befriending Lady Commandi, Nera would designate a common enemy for them, which would be Iris. Sophie was not going to take kindly to the cunning traitor Nera any longer. Iris approached Nera with a smile. Nera immediately complimented Iris's outfit, her lush skirt. Iris complimented it back. Although Nera's outfit was shabby and completely inappropriate for the celebration, Iris knew the trick and specifically noted Nera's beautiful dress. With her old outfit, Nera wanted to show how poor she was, that she couldn't even find a decent outfit for an important event. Iris was supposed to take pity on her and give her the place of Solia. But things didn't go according to plan. Nera had no choice but to thank Iris for the compliment. Empress Lisa entered the hall, accompanied by Howard and Prince Louis. The girls in the hall started discussing the beauty of the previous and current emperor, the Duke of Valencia, and Prince Louis. They were a work of art. Someone said that Prince Louis didn't look like an emperor. The other girls whispered that Count Valencia was much more handsome than Prince Louis, and that he was so beautiful that the Queen dressed him in white. Sophie noted that their words were very brave. Finally, the Queen welcomed and thanked everyone present for their interest in the position of solitaire. Lady Commandi was the first to bow, wishing the Queen eternal prosperity, followed by Iris, then the other girls. Nera asked what the order meant. Iris explained to her that the first person to greet the royal family was the one with the highest rank. Today, Lady Commandi had the highest status. Nera was angry that Iris hadn't told her that before, but Iris replied that they were the simplest rules for a capital aristocrat. Nera was nothing without Iris. In the capital, nobles are taught manners to deal with royalty from childhood. Nera had come here as an adult, so she didn't know anything. In her previous life, Iris had prepared Nehru for the Solia exam, and taught her all the necessary manners. The Queen announced that the final exam would be unusual and would give a girl not only from the most noble family a chance to become a Solia. The girls were handed out a litany of papers. After reading the assignment, Iris realized it was an easy game. At the gala, all the ladies were divided into 3 groups. The first group was represented by Lady Commandy's side. The second group was represented by the side of the ladies from the Earl families, and the third group was represented by Iris. Nera joined the ladies from the Earl families and spoke to the dark-haired girl, the eldest daughter of the Malika family. Sophie noted that this girl suddenly looked coldly at Iris. The dark-haired girl approached and introduced herself as Rowena Malika. Iris introduced herself in return. Both girls had been at Empress Lisa's first reception. Rowena asked if this was the dress Iris had mentioned at the first reception. She said it was more gorgeous than everyone had imagined it to be. But then, Rowena reproached Miss Forrest for the way she could dress her sister in rags. Malika called Iris heartless, for if she had the money and had made herself such an outfit, Iris could have given Nera many new dresses. Rowena demanded that she stop embarrassing her cousin. Iris thought that Malika must have taken pity on Nera and decided to support her, someone with a strong sense of justice. Iris was no longer someone who could be embarrassed so easily. Iris replied that Malika was embarrassing Nera by talking to her. Everyone knows what kind of dresses Nera usually wears, and if she decided to wear an old outfit to the gala, it was because it meant something to her. Iris assumed that Nera wanted to stand out among the expensive dresses so that she would be noticed by the Queen. Iris said that Nera was a lovely girl, and there was no way she would purposely make Iris look bad. Nera smiled, confirming her words. Not to give any reason to think that she wanted to embarrass Iris, Nera told Rowena that this was her first dress since moving to the capital, and it was very important to her. Rowena felt embarrassed by her words. Iris thanked her for worrying about her cousin, told her that Rowena was a good friend, and advised her to continue to be friends with Nera. Rowena apologized for disturbing her. The girls parted in good spirits. After Iris left the gala, the girls asked Nehru why she had not spoken of the dress earlier when asked, for Lady Malika had been dragged into the play. The girls lamented that they had spoken ill of Miss Forrest for no reason. Nera excused herself by saying she didn't want to embarrass Iris. Iris walked out of the castle into the garden, stopping for a long time at the fountain. She told Sophie and Rita that it was a wishing fountain. There was a small hole next to the fountain. You had to make a wish, put a coin in the lion's mouth, and put your hand in the hole. If the god took your hand, the wish would come true. Rita said there might be a path on the other side of the fountain, and another person might take your hand. Iris agreed. That's what maids do. They say the name of the person they love and put their hand down there, so it could be that the person they love takes their hand from the other side. Once upon a time, Empress Isabella, the mother of Duke Valencia, lowered her hand and called His Majesty's name. On the other side, her hand was taken by the previous emperor. Such a romantic story. Iris decided to make a wish too, even if the person she loves wasn't behind the wall. Iris tossed the coin and wished that Anakin was alive. Even if her revenge failed, she wanted to protect the people she loved. Not believing in omens, Iris stuck her hand into the hole where another warm hand touched her. She pulled her hand away, smiling. Her wish was going to come true. On the other side of the wall was Duke Valencia. This was the first time someone's hand had been here since he heard that romantic story about his parents. Not many people are naive enough to believe in romantic legends. The Duke wondered who that girl was, whether he would meet her. At her residence, Iris received a letter. It said that the servants could not help, and the gentlemen were obsessed with emptying all the safes. With the help of loyal subordinates, the author of the letter gathered information about the foreign guests, but it was all to no avail. None of them were of interest to Queen Lisa. Rita came into the room and broke the news and the reforming of the King's Guard. Rita had learned this when she was at the Griffin's house, hearing Howard's father there telling him off. The Griffin family wanted to make Howard head of the Royal Guard, but Duke Valencia suggested another candidate. Rita told how Lord Griffin had told his son off for failing to get the king's attention because he wasn't good enough, and the position was very important to them. Iris knew Lord Griffin treated his son worse than a servant. Iris knew that if that was true, the future had changed again. In a past life this year, Howard was to be the head of the royal guard, and Nera was to be a solitaire. They became very close. Rita continued with the story that the Griffin house is not well liked by the hired servants because of the nagging countess and her daughter, and Howard is bothering all the maids. Iris thought that there was nothing she could do about things that were out of her control. Perhaps it would even be good for her, so there was no point in worrying. Rita said she wanted to take a vacation and visit her nephew, but she would have to stay in the capital because Duke Macartney was coming. Rita's late son-in-law used to work at the Macartney house, but now his friend works for him, who is supposed to give Rita a gift. Iris knew that the Macartneys were descendants of Park Yunho, but there was no mention of them coming to the capital in the letter. Iris asked Rita if anyone else knew about their arrival. Rita replied that their arrival was a secret. If the family wanted to rest, it would be better to choose another place, because the capital was noisy and there was always something going on. Iris realized that the two countries, Lyson and Lohenheim, had decided to cooperate. The first country lacked resources, and the second lacked new technology. Iris realized that the magical artifacts will change the way of life and become a powerful military force. This will attract the attention of the Empress. The Macartney family are the ambassadors. Iris must conquer them. Since Rita knew a lot about this family, the hostess asked her to write down all the information to prepare. Iris gathered all the information about the Macartney family from Rita's mouth, as well as from all sources inside and outside the country. A few days later, she arrived at the news agency to check on a document she had requested from Danny. In the office were Danny and Duke Valencia. Iris said hello and asked to see the papers in the study. Danny whispered to the Duke that he would never be with her, to which the Duke only smiled. Iris took a seat. As she leafed through the documents, she realized that the information was different from what Rita had provided. Iris realized that the agency had given her the wrong information. Danny couldn't understand how she knew, and Valencia said it was a matter of trust, and no one wanted to deceive her. Iris was angry because she'd paid them a lot of money for the information. Iris said that if she didn't get the real information, she would be the first Marquess to report it to the Information Guild. Taking a quill, Iris pretended to take notes, asked who to mark in charge, and how to record the organization as an agency or a fabric store. Danny was nervous, handed over some of the paperwork. Valencia said he'd give the rest when he finished reading. Iris demanded compensation for all the trouble he'd given her. Reading the new documents, Iris determined that the data was similar to what Rita had given, but more accurate. The Duke looked at Iris and admired her concentrated face. Suddenly, Danny stepped between them, saying it was more comfortable to stand here. After an altercation between him and the Duke, Danny jumped out of the office. Iris was surprised by this behavior, but the Duke said that he would compensate him and let Iris continue working. In the evening, when Iris returned home, Sophie handed her hostess a gift from Howard. Sophie assumed he'd sent it because Iris kept cancelling their dates. Sophie didn't like Howard, didn't think he was the right husband for Iris, but she wanted to know what it was like to be loved. Iris asked him to send Howard something in return as a polite gesture of gratitude. She knew that Howard was just getting his way. He preferred girls who could be conquered to sensible ladies. The more Iris ran away from him, the more he would pursue. Iris was at the wedding of a famous court lady's child. She had decided to be in society more often, for the Solier exam was coming up. Howard was also at the wedding. He knew that Iris would come. Iris turned around. He was standing behind her, discussing his game of cards with his friends. After the bride and groom kissed, Iris decided to leave, but Howard followed her. Some guy yelled after him, to which Howard replied that he couldn't remember every loser he'd ever met. Iris thought these words were very rude. Iris said that the guy who called Howard was the son of Count Loenti, who was serving in the National Guard. Next to him stood his sister, who was to become the wife of the current emperor. From her past life, Iris remembered that in 5 years, the emperor would pass away, and this girl would be kicked out of the palace. Iris heard the girls nearby whispering that His Majesty wanted to make an alliance with the Loenti family to gain access to military power. His Majesty was just waiting for the girl to come of age. No wonder Empress Liza hates everything to do with the Lohenti family. There were rumors that the Lohenti palace was the only one who could raise an army without the emperor's help, because their castle was on the border, where military battles took place every year. The empress wanted to marry off her daughter to Prince Louis, but the king decided to marry her himself. The emperor doesn't trust Prince Louis with any power, so rumor has it that Duke Valencia will be the next successor. Howard called the duke an adopted son, the fruit of his mother's affair, and didn't notice the duke was behind his back. The duke said the bride was the sister of his longtime friend. Valencia said that sometimes a close friend's relatives are as important as one's own family. He said he has a friend like that too, and it's frustrating to see a rude man grooming his longtime friend's sister, because she's like a little sister to him too. Lowenthal's son asked who the friend was, to which Valencia replied that it was Anakin Forrest. Iris was astonished to hear that Anakin had sent the white roses through the news agency, or maybe he'd only mentioned Anakin's name to piss Howard off. Howard was angry, asking Iris if it was true that her brother was a close friend of the Duke. The Duke said that he was the one who sent white roses on Anakin's behalf on every anniversary of their parents' deaths. Iris confirmed that. The Duke invited the Loanti children and Lady Forrest to his estate. Valencia said that Terrio was visiting him now, and if Iris wanted to talk about the assignment she gave him, this was the perfect opportunity. Howard was furious that Iris was leaving with them. He wasn't happy about it. And the ladies behind him started whispering that maybe it was just a rumor that Iris and Howard were together. Iris met Loenti's daughter, learning that her name was Luria. Luria was young, but not young enough to be so timid as to grab her brother's sleeve. Perhaps age was not the only reason the king had postponed the wedding. At Jan Valencia's estate, Iris noticed how casually he carries on a conversation, chooses a topic, and creates a pleasant atmosphere. He also observes his interlocutor and keeps the conversation going with subtle humour. Luria yawned loudly and was reprimanded by her brother, after which she began to whimper and finally sobbed loudly. Iris realised that the reason why the king postponed the wedding, why she could not bear an heir, and why she was not killed after the emperor's death, was not because of young Luria's age. Luria was mentally unstable. Iris had the maids prepare a room for Luria. She approached her and began to soothe her. Luria obeyed her, and her brother had never seen his sister so docile. Iris promised not to touch her if she didn't want to, and told her everything was fine. Luria jumped up and tearfully pointed at Valencia, screaming that he was a bad man. Jan said that Miss was sleepy and needed to be escorted to her room. Everyone was discouraged. Perhaps he scared her because he was the tallest man present. The lady called Jan a snake with a triangular head and showed her tongue. There are indeed snakes on the seal of Valencia, but in the minds of those present, the snakes with triangular heads are poisonous, and the children have a discerning eye. It may be that this girl told the truth more correctly than the fortune teller. Iris started asking Luria about the snake and asked her to draw it. Distracted, Iris took the girl to her room. But as she left, Luria said that this old man, the Duke of Valencia, had a black heart and that black things make scary noises. Iris said that she might have upset the Duke with her words. In the room, Luria played with Iris for a long time, then said she was tired. Butler Rohan offered to serve refreshments, but Lady Luria ran out of the room without warning. Iris assumed she'd run to where food smelled, the kitchen. Rohan asked her to stay away from the stove for safety's sake. Luria reached for the heating plate. Iris held her back so she wouldn't hurt herself, and Milady began to sob again. Iris realised she had frightened her with her screams and began to apologise. Rohan was amazed at how Miss Forrest managed to calm her down. She seemed kind and reasonable. Luria demanded that she wanted to make her own dessert. Iris asked her to tell the landlord that the kitchen would be occupied by them for a while. Luria was likely uncomfortable with the new revenge, and it was best to let her do what she wanted. The servants were at a loss as to what these ladies would be doing their jobs. Iris checked with the cook that the biscuits were ready, and asked for cream cheese, cocoa powder, and other ingredients. With doubts about the well-being of the venture, the butler reported to the Duke that the kitchen would be occupied by Lady Iris and Luria. He, along with Luria's brother, decided to join the girls. They heard a noise in the kitchen, and Luria's brother was worried that he should keep a better eye on his sister. The Duke asked him not to worry about anything. In the kitchen, Luria presented them with desserts in cups. Iris said they didn't need baking for them. Those who entered doubted that it was possible to make something decent without baking. But Terrio was already sitting at the table eating the prepared dessert, asking for more. Iris said the dessert was called tiramisu. She thought that there were not one but two children present in the room. Iris invited all the guests to try the dessert. The guests thought that the treat tasted terrible, but decided to support those who made it and not to embarrass the girls. After tasting the tiramisu, the guests were amazed by its incredible flavour. Duke Valencia remembered how Iris had recently brought a cake to their agency that was just as incredible in flavour. Last time, she had kept it a secret which pastry shop she had purchased it from. Now the Duke realised that she had made it herself. Iris was an amazing woman after all. Terrio took another portion, but Luria jumped on him, screaming that it was hers. Iris calmed her down, saying that Terrio was just admiring it and would give it all back, suggesting that Luria try the dessert herself. Luria called Terrio a bad person as well, and the Count stood with a satisfied smile. After Luria fell asleep on Iris's shoulder. Luria's brother said his sister was always looking for him, but he would feel more comfortable if Miss Forrest was with them. Iris felt sorry for Loenti's son, since he was getting so tired, to which he replied that there is nothing wrong with being tired, and not giving up is admirable. This guy told the audience that the rumours that were at the wedding were true. He was really an illegitimate son. When his mother was pregnant, his real father died at the front, and his mother married Count Loenti. The real heir to the house of Loenti is Luria. Valencia noted that it must be very difficult for this guy to talk about his origins in their society. The boy went on to say that he had to learn to run the house because of his sister's fortune, even though he did not belong to the Loenti family. Duke Valencia understood that the emperor was not limiting the house of Loenti to the strength of the army. In the future, as long as the family was in command, they would wield incredible power. The incapacitated heiress and her guardian are invaluable companions. In the future, everyone will want to win their favour. He thought of Iris. How on earth she managed to get this girl situated so quickly. Her simple approach draws out other people's secrets from everyone who interacts with her. She is so savvy, this gorgeous girl. Iris interrupted his musings by saying that Luria needed to be put to bed. The Duke decided to help, took the girl in his arms and carried her. At the exit, everyone heard a loud rumble. Valencia said that Loenti was not the only alarmist in the house and left. The alarmist Ian called Anakin, who was hiding in the next room. Iris never found out what happened between Anakin and Ian after everyone left. Iris went to a tea party before the Solia exam to be held at Kamandi Manor. Iris and Sophie went there, but on the way, Sophie told her about her bad feeling. Lady Kamandi met her in the garden and told her that Iris had arrived early, only wanting to send a carriage to pick her up. Lady Kamandi offered to use her carriage on the way back, to which Iris replied that she was more comfortable in her own. Lady Kamandi was pleased to voice that the Forrest family had fallen into disrepair. Iris and Sophie were discouraged by such rude behaviour. Iris thought that the lady was angry that Iris had recently been invited by Duke Valencia. The Duke had never invited anyone before. Because of her jealousy, Lady Kamandi thought that Iris was her enemy, because everyone knows that the lady likes Count Valencia. But Iris decided to act friendly. Smiling, she said that she met many kind people. One of them was the Duke, who offered to help her. There was distaste on the lady's face. How could the Duke help anyone but her? Kamandi gave orders to the maid to escort the guests to the garden and left. The garden was beautiful. The Kamandi family must have been very rich to keep it in such a state in the middle of winter. It took a lot of workers. Iris realised why the meeting had taken place at Kamandi's house. She wanted to show her superiority to the others. Nera appeared in the distance, waving at Iris. Nera hugged Iris and told her that she was early. Iris replied that she had arrived as soon as she finished her business and didn't think Nera would be early either. Nera responded by saying that she had been visiting Kamandi's house since yesterday. The girls taking the exams were divided into 3 groups: Lady Kamandi and Nera, a group of girls from the Earl's households, and the rest were separate. Iris couldn't understand why Nera teamed up with Kamandi. After all, she was in the group of girls from Earl's households at the last meeting. She wants to get rid of Iris first and foremost. Nera chattered about how Iris had gotten close to Duke Valencia and Lord Morgan because she was a guest at the Duke's estate and the Lord was very kind to her. Iris asked if that was why everyone hated her. Nera replied that she might not be hated, but the rumours were disturbing. Ian and Ryu were some of the most stunning men in the capital. Now Iris understood why these girls wanted to get rid of her in the first place, and why Nera was turning people against her. Sophie had heard Nera's sweet speeches, and didn't believe a word she said. Iris said that she is not in a relationship with any man. Nera replied that she knows and is trying to calm people down, because Iris has an engagement with Howard coming up and would never get involved with other men. But Duke Valencia likes Lady Kamandi, and Iris should apologise. Iris replied that she had nothing to apologise for. Nera insisted that Iris bow her head, threatening that otherwise all the ladies would hate her. Nera said it would be impertinent of Iris to get close to another man because of her imminent engagement. Iris continued to stand her ground, asking why that should be a problem. Suppose this slander turned out to be true, and she got close to the Lord and Earl, then in Iris's opinion, she should apologise to Howard, and Lady Kamandi had nothing to do with it. After all, these two men are human beings, not public domain. Iris went on to say that if these men had claimed her, they wouldn't have invited her over when they were both together. The girls in the neighbourhood took Iris's side, one saying she shouldn't apologise, another that the story had gone too far. Iris said she had accepted the Duke's invitation for another reason. The girls in the neighbourhood were surprised to hear that it was Lord Anakin Forrest, one of whom said she had heard that he had been driven out of town by members of Viscount Michala's family. Nera was angry because she could no longer spread rumours about Iris's relationship with Count Valencia. When she realised that she was losing, Nera hugged Iris virtuously and said that she had always believed that Iris had accepted the Duke's invitation for a reason and that she should have just explained it to everyone. Iris turned to Nera and said that she believed her, but that after that moment, Nera should be careful. If everyone around her didn't know what was going on, they would think that her cousin was just trying to ruin Iris's reputation. Nera wasn't prepared for such an exposure. Back home, Rita reported to Iris that Lord Opal had finished working on the invention that the mistress had ordered. Opal had also sent Iris bergamot and rose essential oils. Iris said that Opal was a genius magician of Lowenheim for being able to make the perfume device so quickly. Rita also presented Iris with an invitation from the royal palace, where the head of the knights had changed, and now the inauguration of the new head of the royal guard was imminent. Iris had to attend and went to get ready. She called Rita to follow her, as she needed to make scented candles. Later, Iris sent some candles to Valencia's estate. The Duke didn't immediately understand why his house was filled with the scent of roses. Rohan was worried about his master, who had not slept for several nights, for he was so often in danger of death. In the morning, Terrio Opal found no scented candles. He wondered where they had gone. In the morning, Terrio Opal started looking for the person who had taken the scented candles. He asked Rue Morgan if he knew anything about them, and when he got a negative answer, he checked everyone in the house. The maids didn't know anything either, because they had gone to bed early the night before. Rohan also saw nothing. Terrio Opal was very upset. He needed a strawberry shortcake to lift his spirits. Everyone was aware of the fact that Terrio needed sugar to function. Terrio checked on everyone in the manor, except for one person. Count Valencia was lying in his study, enjoying the scent of candles. A few days later, Iris arrived at the news agency's office to talk about the McCartney family. Valencia informed her that the parents had died in an accident. Their son, Valerie McCartney, had inherited the title at age 13. Iris thought about the fact that it had only been 2 years since Valerie had become Duke. He was very young, now 15 years old. Iris had to gain his trust. Iris needed it to pass the Solier exam, and the Duke needed it to gain access to magical technology. Danny entered the office and told her that there was a commotion in the waiting room, because of Lord Mellick. Iris remembered that a girl from Mellick's house had once accused her of dressing Nera in rags. Also, Iris heard that her brother was a debauchee. Danny said that the situation was serious. Things almost came to a fight. Danny said that Lord Malika grabbed a girl he had just met by the waist and offered to spend time with him because he liked her. After the outraged girl rejected him, he tried to grab her by the hair. The Duke gave orders to throw him out of the building and never let him back in. Iris had to leave. The Duke said Iris was lightly dressed for this weather, but Iris said she would hire a carriage and stay warm. The Duke insisted and put Iris in her outer garments, saying she was beautiful. Danny couldn't bear to watch the Duke's flirtations. He asked Iris why she had come in a hired carriage. Iris replied that she had decided to be more careful. Danny realised that after Jan invited her to his estate, people did not look at Iris very kindly, but Ian didn't seem to care. Iris walked to the carriage through the corridors of the news agency, dressed as Count Valencia, and thought how nice it felt to be attracted to him. But she needed to control herself before it turned into something more. She had to get a grip. On the way home, Iris's carriage stopped abruptly. A man rushed in and pulled Iris outside. This man was waiting for a girl with silver hair, wearing a blue dress. Iris tried to figure out if it was a knight or a mercenary, but a knight wouldn't attack like that. Iris thought it was Michala's family hunting her, but they couldn't. Iris had gotten rid of all the forged documents from the vault. They wouldn't dare touch her until the new documents were ready. Otherwise, they'd get nothing after her death and lose their guardianship status. The mercenary said that she could be killed now, and she was not afraid. That was very noble. But what was she thinking when she got involved with a madman? The heir to Melik's family appeared in front of Iris. She recognized him from her past life. Apparently, he wanted to kidnap the woman who refused him, but he made a mistake by grabbing Iris. He realized that the mercenaries had stopped the wrong carriage and started berating and kicking them. Really, this guy was crazy. Iris demanded to let her go since it was a mistake. Melik said that Iris was very good. Iris promised that she would forget what had happened if they let her go now. Iris thought about what to do. She has not yet entered the high society, and these people do not know who she is. But if Melik finds out that she is a marquess, there is no telling what he will do, because for kidnapping people of her class faces severe punishment. Perhaps a clever person would find a way out, but Melik is not a clever person. Iris offered the mercenaries a large payment, twice as much as Melik had promised them if she was released. She received a slap from him for this act. Melik grabbed Iris by the hair, asked her how dare she do such a thing, and threatened her. Suddenly a punch flew into Melik's face, and he collapsed to the ground face down in the dirt. The boy said he needed to cool down and turned to face Iris. It was Anakin. Iris rushed over to her brother, with Count Valencia, Opal, and Danny standing nearby. Anakin was the one person Iris longed for even in her dreams, crying every day. Iris was unable to meet her brother before he died in his past life and lost hope when she came back. The white roses that someone sent every year could have been from Ian. Perhaps he'd tricked her at Anakin's request. Iris had been afraid to look for him before, lest she grieve his death. Iris hugged her brother. He apologized for being away for so long, for making her cry. He remembered how he had promised his mother that when he grew up, he would always protect his sweet little sister. Iris cried and asked where he had been for so long, and he begged for forgiveness. When Melik stood up, he started accusing Iris of being crazy and trying to seduce him first. Anakin lunged at Melik, yelling at him not to say dirty words about his sister. Danny thought Melik would be killed if he didn't intervene, but Valencia stopped him. Danny told the Count that killing Melik would ruin all their plans. Anakin wouldn't be able to become head of the royal guard, because Melik was a nobleman after all. Valencia replied that Melik deserved to die. Terrio agreed with Valencia. He thought Eric was good. He remembered her treats. Danny had thoughts running through his mind that there are many witnesses around, especially Terrio's soldiers, although they are guarding him, but they are paid by the Opal house. Opal family are crazy who locked up their son for money. In the future, they can use this incident. Iris finally stopped Anakin. She asked him not to take Melik's life, for then she would be separated from her brother again. Anakin agreed. Danny called a guard and instructed him to keep Anakin or the Count away from Melik and take him to the police. Danny was left to deal with the mercenaries. He ordered his soldiers to teach them a lesson. Iris's hands were shaking, but it was all over now. Anakin was hugging her. Iris suggested he go home, but Anakin couldn't do that. He had to keep following Viscount Michala, but he promised that they would meet again in the office of the news agency. As Anakin drove away, Count Valencia thought about how Iris could certainly be smart and sensible, but in front of her brother she was still a child. How much she missed him. Count Valencia was annoyed that Iris was smiling at his brother instead of him. At night in her bed, Iris thought about the fact that she hadn't seen her brother in 10 years. She was glad that he was okay, that he was back with her. Iris really wanted to please him and decided to cook the most delicious dishes for him, food from another world, like bibimbap, fried chicken, pizza and ribs. Cooking wasn't very advanced in her world, so having memories of pak enqua, Iris didn't like the local food very much. Coming to the kitchen, Rita also woke up to the noise. She asked if there was anything she could be of use to Iris. Iris wondered what sauces were in the kitchen. Rita decided to present her mistress with a gift from all the servants of the house, clay pots filled with spices. They were made according to a recipe that Rita's son-in-law had learned while working at the McCartney house. Rita said that these spices made the dishes spicy and flavorful. Iris realized that they were spices for ramen. Rita was surprised how Iris could know about a dish like ramen. Maybe she wouldn't like the gift. Iris was delighted. She gave Rita a big hug and thanked her. Now their food would taste much better. Iris and Rita set to work. Finding meat, green onions and pears, they began to cook for Anakin. Early the next day, Iris arrived at the news agency bright-eyed. She missed Anakin. He missed his sister too, and hugged her tightly. Duke Valencia and Danny were also in the office. Ari said she would like to eat with everyone and brought breakfast for everyone. Anakin had said it meant a lot to him, but the Duke's face expressed displeasure. Why was she so pleased with Anakin? Wasn't Ian the only one who was really nice to look at? Ari asked to use the kitchen as she wanted the food to be hot. Danny asked to wait for a servant to help, but then remembered it was their day off. Anakin volunteered to help his sister. He said he liked this way of life better. He had learned to enjoy life. Danny thought about how often Anakin had been on the receiving end of death and had been injured countless times. Iris saw that Anakin's arms were scarred and wounded. She realized that he was much stronger than when they were children. Hadn't her brother been a mercenary all this time, wandering endlessly across the battlefields? Anakin set fire to the stove that ran on the power of the electric stone. This stove was like an induction stove from another world. If there were such things here, they would be a success. Anakin pulled out the meat and asked what to do with it. Danny saw that the meat was brown and yelled that it was rotten and couldn't be eaten. Iris laughed at that. She told Anakin to put the meat right on the grate, and Danny didn't stop and said that eating it would kill you. Anakin got angry, said it was impossible for his sister to bring tainted meat and slapped Danny. Iris realized that people in Lowenheim weren't used to marinating meat and didn't think about spices. Danny went to complain about Anakin to the Duke, but it was impossible to distract him from his thoughts. Ian was thinking about how to get the first place in the girl's heart, how to get rid of Anakin. She can't be that happy with him. In the kitchen, Anakin and Iris continued to cook. Iris said to fry without oil, which was also new in this world. Iris showed him how to fry the ribs. She said that when the sauce was dark, it was hard to tell when the meat was done, so they had to cut into it. Iris said that the cooks make the food look beautiful, to which Danny replied that for a noble lady, Iris was a very good cook. Also appreciated that dark sauce, the smell of which was delicious. Danny wanted to ask for the first bite, but realized that Iris had brought the food primarily for her brother. Anakin was pleasantly surprised that Iris had done all this for him. But where had she learned to cook like that? Did the Viscount's family really make her work in the kitchen? Iris replied that she missed him a lot after he left, so she was looking for new hobbies, and this was one of them. Anakin expressed regret that his sister had to go through so much. Iris replied that she was also sorry that he had been through so much in the faraway lands, and she had been doing useless things all this time. Danny reminded them that the food was getting cold, and Iris invited everyone to the table. Iris remembered that the most popular Korean dishes were poljiji and ribs. There were no people who didn't like them. Danny said the flavor was amazing. And Duke thought about how Anakin and Iris looked like they were in love. He was very jealous of her. After the meal, her brother and sister retired to another room to talk. Iris asked if Anakin had been a mercenary all this time and got a positive answer. She asked why she hadn't heard from him in all those years. Anakin tried to avoid answering, but Iris insisted. Iris chided her brother about how he could put himself in danger. What would happen to her if he died? Anakin apologized. Danny heard everything and remarked that he'd never seen Anakin so obedient. Iris asked to talk about how Anakin had met Count Valencia. No one answered that question. Iris then asked how Anakin had managed to be by her side yesterday, just when she was in danger. Anakin revealed that when he returned, he had gone into hiding so that the Viscount's family wouldn't hurt her. He would reveal himself when she was safe. Anakin said he was going to see his sister soon, because Ian had helped him get a position in the Imperial Court. Iris wondered how he had gotten the position, since he was not a member of either the Forest or Michala families. The Duke replied that there are situations where talent is more important than title. Iris realized that if Anakin took the position of head of the royal army, he wouldn't be able to avoid getting involved in political confrontations. By pushing Queen Lisa's nephew aside, he would risk ruining his relationship with her. Anakin should not be dragged into this fight. Thinking back to her past life, Iris wondered who had helped her escape from prison and remain undetected. When Howard and Nera accosted her, who opened the cell door? Who had provided her with information and an escape route? Who had intercepted reports and helped her when she was starving? It was the four friends. Iris realized that they were doing all this for her because she was Anakin's sister. She told her brother that everyone around them should think they were in a fight because Anakin was against her marriage to Lord Griffin. Then Empress Lisa won't be able to blame Iris for anything. There are still benefits to be gained from the Empress. Anakin tried to explain that the Empress is very dangerous, but Iris replied that she knew these, and someone had to be the spy, let it be her. Ever since Iris went back in time, she had only one goal, to get back what was taken away. Now she must take back from them what she herself had lost. Iris had to thank those people who had given their lives for her. She was going to protect them, just like they had protected her. Eri curled up out of her thoughts, looked at the time on her smartphone, and said she had to go. The Count handed Iris the gloves and realized that he had felt the softness of that fabric before. As she approached the carriage, Iris saw Ian watching her and asked him to come over. She asked why he was doing all this. His behavior was out of line. Of course Iris was grateful to him. If he hadn't helped her secretly in her past life, she wouldn't have lasted a week. Iris wanted to help him too, but what he's doing is hurting them both. Regardless of the sincerity of his intentions, people will spread dirty rumors and try to get rid of them. When Valencia suggested that she date him, maybe she just misunderstood him. Iris said his actions might provoke rumors. Jan asked if Iris had ever worn them when she came to the palace. Iris said that she wore them on the day the Solia exam was announced. The gloves are made of a special fabric to use a smartphone without taking them off. Valencia explained to Iris that he had come to the palace on the day of the Solia exam to introduce Anakin. The hand that Iris had touched at the Fountain of Desire was his. Now he understood why Iris had always been special, for it was fate itself that had brought them together. He had thought so from the moment he had met her in his youth, and he thought so now. Jan asked Iris if she knew that they had seen each other before, when they were children. Iris answered that no matter how hard she tried to remember, she couldn't. Jan said that they had spent a lot of time together as children. He remembered that Iris had liked frogs then. Iris was always crying and following him around. It annoyed him. Jan's father, the late emperor, said that when Iris grows up, she will be his life partner, that Jan should take good care of her. Jan said that even though they are no longer children, but every time he sees Iris, he wants to go back to his childhood. Jan remembered how she comforted him at his father's grave. At the emperor's reception, Iris stood thinking. Another lady called out to her, and Iris explained that she had a little problem. Iris thought about the fact that Anakin would be appointed head of the royal army today, and needed to spread the rumor that they were in a fight. But all she could think about was Ian. There are so many things Iris would like to ask him, but as soon as she sees his sad face, all words are gone. She would like to know where and when they had seen each other before, how she is related to the late emperor, and why he looks at her with tenderness. So Ian in a past life protected her not because of her brother, but because of her father. One of the ladies said that Iris can't have problems as serious as Lady Malika's because her brother has been arrested. Iris was waiting for this day because this man has done many bad things. This time he can't get away. She thought about the fact that even aristocrats are arrested if they break the law. Lady Malika approached Iris and asked for a moment of her time. Iris knew that Ian and Ryu had decided to keep it a secret, that Lord Malika was trying to hurt her. Iris was worried that Lady Malika might somehow find out that she was the reason her brother was arrested and get angry. But Lady Malika bowed to Iris and apologised. She said that her father would personally visit Iris later and compensate for the damage, but she also realised that such a problem could not be solved by compensation. Iris thought that the lady was apologising to extract leniency for her brother. Iris accepted her apology, but forgiveness was out of the question. Lady Malika was exhausted, perhaps because of the criticism and rumours. Iris decided to support her and told her that she should not take the blame for her brother's misdeeds, saying that it was not a sin to have a sinner in the family. After saying that, Iris said goodbye and left. These words helped Lady Malika, for no one believed her when she said she knew nothing of what had happened, and everyone reproached her for not being able to control her brother. Malika called out to Miss Forrest. She wanted to catch up with her and thank her again, but they were in the Great Hall. A smiling Nera met her in the Great Hall. She asked Iris loudly if she hadn't heard that Lord Mellick had been arrested. The Earl also said that he couldn't bear such humiliation and was resigning. Everyone present looked at Lady Mellick reproachfully. Iris beckoned Lady Mellick to follow, the girls whispering after them. Lady Mellick didn't understand why they were being treated as if they had done something wrong, and she was also worried that it hadn't been long since she had been rude to Iris about Nera's dress, and that Iris might still be angry with her. Lady Melika introduced herself again. Iris said that they already knew each other, but Melika wanted to start the story of their acquaintance anew. Iris realised this and introduced herself in return. The Empress finally came out to the girls. She was gloomy. The girls around them were whispering about the reason for the Empress's bad mood. Perhaps she was in a bad mood because Lord Griffin had not become the head of the royal army. Another one refuted this speculation, saying that the Empress's nephew had been given a position in the Royal Guard, which was the same as the head of the army. Iris realised that her outrage was due to Anakin becoming head of the guard. The Empress thought at that moment of Iris's insolence, having heard how close she was to her brother, so she couldn't have been unaware of his appointment. The Queen had gone to great lengths to find out who would be the head, even though she thought she was in control. Empress Liza realised that since she couldn't find out anything, it meant that either the Emperor or Empress Ilia was behind it. But there was also one more person who could stop her, Jan. He was the biggest threat to her son. He was in control. The Queen suspected that Miss Forrest was going to team up with Ian while she was trying to establish a relationship with her. But why? Because the Queen hasn't hurt her in any way, and Iris is engaged to Howard. If Iris is a mage, she better be on the Queen's side, but if she was tricked into joining Ian, she's crazy. The Queen listened to the girls' conversation. Iris sighed loudly and heavily. They began to question her about what had happened. Iris said gloomily that she didn't want to bother anyone and everything was fine. The girls urged her to tell them, because even though they were rivals, they had one challenge in common. Iris sighed heavily again and said that she used to wish her brother were alive, but there is no limit to human greed. Iris said she longed for true love, for Lord Griffin. The girls were touched. Iris continued and turned to the Queen. Miss Forrest said that the Empress is loved by God himself, for her marriage to the Emperor has been blessed, and the Prince simply adores her. Iris said that the prosperity of the imperial family is entirely the Empress's merit, and thanked her. The Empress was surprised that Iris was pining for Howard. The Empress thought that apparently Iris's brother was against her marriage to Howard. Even though Howard was her nephew, Lisa realised he wasn't a good man, and not every house would want him as a son-in-law. If that's the case, it's understandable why Anakin stripped Howard of his position. He wanted to stop his sister's marriage so badly. Later in the office of the news agency, Iris reflected on the fact that so far she had only started a rumor about the disagreement with her brother. But the next time they met, she would have to convince Queen Lisa of the rightness of her thoughts. But right now they needed to focus on the ambassador's reception. Danny had promised more information, and Iris had come to get it. There was a crack at the door, and Iris hid, for Danny had warned her that no one was to come. Iris realised that she had become nervous after the incident with Lord Mellick, but caution never hurt. If need be, she could use her smartphone to sound the alarm, and people would come running at the sound. Ian entered the office. He almost fell down, and Iris managed to pick him up. He was wounded, but he asked Iris what she was doing here so late. He showed Iris where a box of bandages and medicine was, and asked her to bring it over. Things were worse than they seemed at first glance. Iris persuaded the Count to call someone for help. The wound might get an infection. But Jan said that he was used to it, as he had been through it many times, and she shouldn't worry. Iris asked Ian why he couldn't trust other people, but he was used to being betrayed by those he trusted. Iris said she was good at dressings, but this was her first time dealing with a knife wound. She found information on smartphone help about the specifics of stab wounds. Iris said she needs to check the wound, as internal organs may be involved and surgery may be needed. Iris said she had to open the abdomen to see if the internal organs were damaged. Jan thought she would use a special magic artifact, but Iris said that there was no such thing, and she would use a knife. Iris understood that in this world mages had created some medicines, such as antiseptics, but people were more interested in artifacts, so medicine was slow to develop. Anyone would flinch if they knew they were going to be cut, so Ian was nervous too. Was she really going to kill him? Iris ordered to sit still. The wound wasn't too deep, so Ian was lucky it was only a scratch. He asked if Iris was really a mage. Realising that in this world, anyone with memories of the earth was considered a mage, she said he was wrong to doubt her. Ian said he thought she was just possessing a unique artifact. Iris said a unique artifact that only she could use, and thought about that feature being available after she had set up her fingerprint. Ian thought about the fact that this was the first time there was a mage in Lowenheim. Still, Iris didn't realise how special she was. He asked why Iris still hadn't told everyone that she was a mage, because then she would be the most respected person. Iris replied that with her magical powers, you can't be careless. And she thought that if she said she was a mage, the future would change again. People would treat her differently and her revenge might fail. Iris said that everything was ready, and Ian thought how well she was doing with the bandages. Iris felt sorry for him, saying that it must be hard for him to overcome all the difficulties alone, that he had been through a lot, and Iris was proud of the way he handled everything. Iris said that since talking to her reminded Jan of his father, those were words his father would probably say to him, so she wanted to support him. Iris advised Jan not to work too hard and to disinfect his wound every day, and left. Jan was left alone, remembering how they used to play as children. Why didn't she remember those days? A few days later, on the day of her appointment as head of the Royal Guard, Iris was invited to have a private conversation with Queen Lisa. Iris was offered peppermint tea, as it was noted that she had liked it very much on her last visit. The Queen said that their tastes were similar. The clock struck, and Iris glanced up. The Queen said that the ceremony should begin now, and if Iris wanted to, she could go. Iris refused, saying Anakin wouldn't be pleased, and the Queen asked if she and her brother were on bad terms. Iris replied that they had a disagreement. Iris would like to go to the inauguration, but if she did, the Queen would suspect her of cheating. The Queen said that Iris could confide in her and tell her what had happened with her brother. She could give her advice. Iris saw that behind the mask of virtue, the Queen only wanted to hear that Iris was in a quarrel with her brother. Iris thought about how the Queen herself did not realise that she had fallen into a trap. Iris said that her words might upset the Empress. After all, it was about Lord Griffin. The Queen thought that Iris was just a girl with no social skills who never left home. She couldn't be smart enough to deceive the Queen. Iris said that her brother was against her engagement to Howard. She and her brother have different mothers, but he inherited the Forrest surname. The queen said with pity that Iris must be very upset. Her brother doesn't have forest blood in him. Iris also said that her brother was banished from the house. The queen spilled to continue the story. Iris said she couldn't protect her brother, so he resents her. To top it all off, Iris chose who she wants to marry on her own. Anakin is annoyed because of that. The queen said that lineage is not that important and ancestry can get you in trouble. The queen sympathetically went on to say that Iris had lost her family early, and it was natural that she now aspired to a family life. Her wish should come true when she married. Iris agreed, but realized that the queen only cared about her background. The queen said she would be happy to see Iris as her nephew's wife, but there was another reason why Iris was invited. The queen gave her a roll of information about the ambassadors. It stated that the delegation was indeed led by the Duke of Macartney. Iris asked why she was the only one who should know that. The queen replied that the Solia exam was a choice of who was best suited to serve the empress, and she could be generous with those she favoured. Iris promised to repay the empress for her kindness and bowed. The queen said she endured a lot to supplant the emperors, because originally the palace was supposed to belong to Queen Elijah. The emperor's wives were dying from illness or accidents, so if Iris became a Solia, she would have a lot of work to do. Iris replied that she was ready for anything. On her way home, Iris was met by Countess Leasley. She brought her congratulations on Anakin's position. Iris thanked her. Countess Leasley always brought gossip and couldn't keep any secrets. She asked Iris what she was doing at the palace. Iris said that her house supplied the palace with herbs. That's why she came, and now she was going to her estate. Iris knew that since she had arrived in Forrest's carriage, rumours could not be avoided, so she did not stop the Countess from leaving. The next day, sitting in her manor, Iris thought about the fact that they usually disappeared right after the meeting. They must have made their way from the main building to the annex where the meeting was being held, because they'd heard that Anakin was now head of the royal guard, and she was the Empress's favourite. The Viscounts came into the room and said hello, wishing Miss Forrest well. Iris asked if anything was wrong, and when they said no, Iris breathed a sigh of relief, for they hardly ever saw each other, even though they lived on her land. The Viscount said they had been very busy. Viscount Hagos also entered the room. Iris asked what everyone had been so busy doing that they had forgotten about the meeting. The Viscounts became nervous. They began to whisper that they had ignored her for too long, and now she was the Empress's favourite and would likely become a solitaire soon. Hagos remembered how shocked he had been that Anakin had returned and taken over as head of the royal guard, and yet Iris was only 20 years old. Iris didn't understand why they were standing there saying nothing. One of the Viscounts started a speech about how Anakin was so young but had already taken a high position. Iris remembered that they had always despised her brother, and now they were calling him young master. One of the Viscounts interrupted the previous one's incoherent speech and went on to say that Anakin's appointment was a cause for celebration, and to celebrate the young master's return at the same time. Iris recalled that these men disliked Anakin, and added in her mind that they had once kicked him out penniless. The Viscounts excused themselves for worrying when Iris didn't assert her position. Perhaps someone would put rebellious thoughts in Anakin's head. The Viscount said that now Iris has taken her place, and Anakin is in a high position, they can return to their estates with a clear mind, but before that, they would really like to see Iris with her brother. The other Viscounts cheered, thinking that Iris was soft-hearted and would not allow Anakin to return to the manor. But Iris agreed, saying that she had put too many responsibilities on the Viscounts, being selfish. Now Anakin was busy, and Iris hadn't seen him in person yet, but further ordered the Viscounts to stay on their estates, and she and her brother would visit them. Iris sent the Viscounts away. They were doomed. In the afternoon, Iris sat in the office of the news agency and talked about the Viscount's actions to Anakin and Dany. Anakin said there was nothing worse than stupidity and greed, and Viscount Hagos was an example of that. Iris said she told her vassals to visit the manor only during meetings. Anakin pointed out that Iris had almost chased them all away, but since they had gone into this conversation on their own, they couldn't object to anything. Iris said that she couldn't get rid of them all at once, after all they had taken care of her lands for 10 years. Anakin backed her up. She had made the right decision so they wouldn't turn their backs on her. Watching his brother and sister, Ree thought that he would love to have a sister like Iris. She was kind to her brother and kind to everyone else, regardless of status, and she had a charming smile. He said aloud that it was nice to see them together. Anakin asked Ree to take care of Iris like a sibling, and he asked Iris to be nice to Ryu as well, but only to Ryu, not Danny and Ian. Danny was surprised. Anakin explained that Ryu was the most suitable match for Iris. No one could compare to him. Ian asked if he wouldn't be a good husband for her. Anakin turned to Iris, saying he wouldn't let that happen. Ian interrupted the conversation by asking what Iris had decided about Duke McCartney. Iris said she'd try to get along with him, asking what they'd been interested in when they were kids, since the Duke was just a boy. Anakin said he was most interested in swords and duels. Danny said that even as a child, he was interested in money, because it had the highest value regardless of age. Ree said that it was not fun for the other children to play with him, because he loved to read. Terrio Opal interrupted them, saying that they were all lying because they said they liked alcohol and women the most. The boys began to argue that it wasn't true. Jan said that there was only one woman he liked. Iris moved closer to Terrio and asked what else they might like besides women. His opinion, Iris thought, was the most useful. Terrio said that another thing everyone liked was food. Iris realized that was something no one could resist. In the capital, the aristocrats were preparing to receive Duke McCartney. Raisin is the birthplace of magicians, and the McCartneys are the most famous family of magicians. The fact that Duke McCartney is so young plays into the aristocrats' hands. The girls who participated in the Solia exam also had concerns. The servants were discussing why all the girls aspired to become a Solia. In fact, it didn't matter whether they were a Solia or not. Those ladies who passed the second exam would become famous. It would be easy for them to settle into society and find a husband. But the second exam could be taken by two, and the third exam could only be taken with McCartney's approval. Iris also began to prepare for the challenge. She was looking for what food from the other world might still be enjoyed here. Perhaps food in the oven. Sophie came in and asked what kind of bread to make. Iris asked for buttered buns and a baguette. Finally, Iris found the dish she wanted. It required cheese. After everything was ready, the maids gathered, wondering how their mistress had managed to prepare everything. On the plate was flatbread with cheese, meat, and vegetables. Iris explained that the dish was called pizza. Rita recognized the dish. Her brother-in-law used to make it. Iris gave everyone a treat. The chefs were worried that Iris would take food made of mozzarella cheese for the celebration, not from expensive varieties of hard cheese. Because mozzarella is eaten by commoners, aristocrats might be offended. But having tasted a slice, the chefs praised the culinary talent of the hostess. Iris discovered the secret, that if the mozzarella is sliced and baked, it will be tender and soft. The cooks praised that although the meat and vegetables on top are so different, they combine perfectly, and the cheese helps to keep the harmony of flavours. Sophie was a proud hostess. She had once again managed to surprise everyone. Later, Iris decided to treat her brother and his friends and brought the pizza to the news agency. Anakin and the others liked the dish very much. Iris decided not to worry that the other aristocrats wouldn't eat it. Iris said her goodbyes. Terrio asked for more pizza. Ree noted that Iris was the only Solia applicant who had been invited to the celebration in honour of the ambassador's arrival. Iris caught up with Ian in the hallway and gave her some ointment. Iris burned her hand while making pizza, and he noticed it and took care of her. Ian could be so attentive sometimes. A few days later, at a reception to celebrate the ambassador's arrival, it was whispered behind Iris's back that she was the only candidate for Solia who had been invited, and the ladies of honour were not even allowed to bring their daughters. Many concluded that it was Iris who would be the Solia. Queen Lisa introduced Miss Forrest to the public and Ambassador McCartney, saying that her parents had died due to an accident, and Iris was now the head of the family. Iris bowed, saying she was honoured to be introduced to him. The ambassador looked at her with pity in his eyes, for she had lost her parents. In addition to bowing, Iris made a special gesture, the raisin greeting. Everyone wondered how Iris knew about this greeting, and many said it was beautiful. Iris thought it wasn't too complicated. It was very similar to the Korean greeting. Iris also presented McCartney with a gift. She said that her dish was not comparable to the royal cuisine, but once the ambassador tried it, he would not regret it. The dish looked and smelled very appetizing, but everyone around did not understand how such a guest could be presented with bread. Did Iris really want to embarrass the queen? Macartney didn't touch the local food at the gala, but when he saw Iris's gift, he immediately recognized it as pizza. When he tasted the dish, he said that only his mother could make such a dish. It was just as Iris had suggested. Since Rita's son-in-law cooked it, Macartney must have recognized the dish. Duke Macartney was moved to tears by the gift. Everyone around him wondered how Miss Forrest was able to recreate the dish. Macartney said that the recipe had been passed down in the family, starting from the founder of the family, the Yunho caster. But how did Iris know about it? Iris was glad she had impressed the Duke. Macartney asked if it was true that there was a caster in Lowenheim. He added that he missed that food very much. After his mother died, no one could make it. Iris said that she too had lost her parents at an early age. She was too young to lead the clan and felt frightened. Duke Macartney was amazed. He said he had to come here to meet Miss Forrest. The Duke's subject said that the women of Lowenheim were magnificent, and Queen Lisa added that Iris was the best of them. The Queen was pleased with the reception. The next day, the Solier candidates gathered at the Imperial Palace. The assembled girls were angry, and Iris realized that they had learned about what had happened the day before. One said that Iris's cooking was even better than jewelry, while the other said that it was just food and she shouldn't attach such importance to it. Lady Melika came up to Iris and said she heard the ambassadors showering compliments on Iris, saying she was the best. Melika told Iris to ignore the competitors' talk. They have help from their rich parents, but they would never think of such a thing. Iris said thank you for your support. Melika whispered that they were just jealous because they wanted to become a Solier, but Iris was one step ahead. At a neighbouring table, Lady Commandi, despite what she wanted, couldn't argue with Iris. Her friend asked how she could stay calm and do nothing. Commandi wondered if Iris's brother was a close friend of Duke Valencia. Lady Commandi had been sure before that Ian had reciprocated her feelings. She thought that Iris was using her brother as an excuse to get closer to Jan. Commandi was very annoyed by Iris's calm and confident face. She thought she was the only one worthy of being with Jan. Lady Commandi approached Iris and said that she had recently come of age. Iris congratulated her with a smile. Commandi said that for her coming of age, her parents had given her flowers, jewellery and a whole garden of roses. She then asked Iris what about her. Lady Melika thought that only parents, godparents and close family friends should give gifts. She is mocking Iris since she is an orphan. The reflection was interrupted by Duke Valencia entering the hall. He said he had come to meet the king, but when he heard Iris's voice, he couldn't help but say hello. Ree stood nearby, adding that he was afraid to disturb Iris, but couldn't resist seeing her. Ian said he hoped he wouldn't disturb their conversation. Since Iris was his friend's sister, he considered her his sister as well. Lady Commandi was very angry, saying that Miss Forrest must be happy to have such a brother. A week later, another meeting of the candidates for solitaire was scheduled. Before the meeting, Iris went to the news agency to find out something about Duke Macartney. It was dark in the office, where Ree, Therio and Anakin were asleep. She didn't wake them. Apparently there had been a long meeting last night. The Duke of Valencia met her in the hallway and asked her the purpose of her visit. She said she wanted to talk about Macartney, but all the friends were so tired that Iris apologised, saying she would come another time. She also noted that all 5 had abrasions on their hands. That same day, Iris entered the Queen's banquet hall. She had heard that Jan had invested money in the construction of this hall, and it was magnificent. All the aristocrats admired the place. Iris was approached by Lady Melika and Commandi. Iris approached them. Lady Commandi reminded her of her birthday present again, but received a threatening shout from Lady Melika in response. Iris tried to calm her down by telling her that everything was fine. If Melika goes against Commandi, it will only hurt her. Lady Commandi laughed in response and asked why the girls were reacting that way to her question. Lady Commandi just wanted to know if Miss Forrest had really been given nothing for her coming of age. She went on to say that any wealthy family had many connections, but she didn't mean to say that the Forrest family was dysfunctional at all. Kamandi said that it was very sad that Iris had nothing to answer. Iris realized that the more she talked to Jan, the worse her relationship with Lady Kamandi became, and talking to her would not bode well. Kamandi asked what Iris's brother was doing, as he was close to the Duke, and said she was sorry that her only relative had abandoned her. Suddenly, a subject approached the girls, bowed to Iris, and said he had an urgent matter. The guy pretended to work for Iris and said loudly that there was a problem with the watering of the garden she had gotten for her coming of age. Kamandi's face contorted. Did Iris really get a coming of age present too? Iris didn't understand what was going on, if Rowena had set it all up, but she was surprised too. Lady Kamandi thought that Iris had deliberately planned the whole thing in advance so as not to be embarrassed. She was sure that Iris was just a liar, even though she pretended to be a noble woman. Lady Kamandi interrogated what incredible gift Iris had received for her coming of age and asked to see the garden. She was determined to make a mockery of Iris. Iris didn't know what to say, but her subject said the garden wasn't far away, and she could go there now. Kamandi said that everyone was obliged to see the gift, and they went into the garden following the footman. Iris did not know the man. Lady Kamandi smilingly asked why Iris's face was so pale. Maybe she wasn't feeling well. Iris asked Kamandi to stop. Tears came to her eyes. When the girls arrived at the garden, everyone was delighted to see a huge garden of irises in front of them. Lady Kamandi's face turned red with anger, for this was not a garden. It was more like a forest. The footman bowed and got into the carriage. Iris learned that the same carriage was used by Ian during his secret visits to the agency. Iris remembered seeing the abrasions on the hands of Ian and his friends in the morning. She realized that the Emperor's heir, the Duke of the Empire, a man who shouldn't get his hands dirty, and his friends had been planting flowers in this garden for her all night. Rowena was glad that Iris had gotten such a gift. She shouldn't have been angry then. In response, Iris thanked Lady Malika for standing up for her. Rowena asked if the garden had a name. Iris said it didn't yet, and suggested Rowena come up with a name. Rowena suggested calling the garden a forest of irises. It was beautiful. Iris smiled as she thought of her friends. Lady Kamandi was trembling, nervous. Behind her back, the other girls were whispering that she had made them look bad. She thought of Iris's deliberate delay in replying about the gift to set the scene. Now their relationship would never be good. In the evening, in her room, Iris studied the information on her smartphone. Sophie asked that since the landlady had said it was a treasure, what she was going to do with it. Iris replied that she had received a wonderful gift today and didn't want to be in debt. Iris was looking for something to give to people who had everything they wanted. It had to be a gift from another world. Most things that could be given in her world had not been invented yet. For example, a wristwatch. It would be too difficult for Iris to create its mechanism. While Sophie was warming up the food on the fire, she suddenly cried out that the fire had gone out. Now she had to go and get the flint to light it again. Iris's eyes sparkled. She shrieked, saying that this was what was needed. She would give them fire. In her world, it's hard to start a fire. No lighters or matches have been invented yet. This world repeats the history of Earth. There's already gasoline here. Yunho McCartney discovered it. So power plants and electric stones were already created. But there were no lighters. Maybe Yunho thought it was a very dangerous device and would be used as a weapon. Iris looked up how to make a lighter on her smartphone and asked Sophie to invite a good blacksmith and magician. 10 days later, Iris was sitting in the office of a news agency. Ree noted that it had only been 10 days since they had last seen each other, but it seemed like much longer. Iris asked her friends if their hands were healed, and also said that Rowena Melika had named the garden a forest of irises. Her friends didn't understand how Iris knew and tried to pretend they had nothing to do with the garden. Iris realized they were doing it so she wouldn't feel indebted. Iris said it was no match for their gift, but she wanted to surprise them. Iris handed the box to Duke Valencia and asked him to open it. No one realized what the object was. They hadn't seen one before. Iris explained that it was a lighter. She said that by opening the lid and turning the wheel, you could get fire, but Jan tried to light it the wrong way. Iris stopped him, saying he could get hurt that way. At the word of injury, Anakin came running in. He pulled Iris aside and said never to go near the Duke again. He was dangerous. Iris tried to calm him down, and the Duke said his sister was old enough to disobey her brother. Iris told the Duke how to use the lighter properly, so it would be safe. When the fire lit up, the friends were amazed. Danny asked what it was, since it wasn't flint inside, but there was fire. Ree suggested that Iris is really a spellcaster and uses magic. Terrio came over. He was the first to guess that there was gasoline inside. He took out a set of tools and wanted to open the lighter to find out how it worked. His friends didn't let him do it, saying that he would break the magic artifact and shouldn't touch other people's things. Iris told Terrio Opal to show the drawing of the ignition mechanism. Terrio was surprised and touched. In gratitude, he promised to show Iris his laboratory. Ree thought that this was a big step for Terrio, because he treasured the lab. Even his own family, who manipulated him, he wouldn't let them in. Iris thanked Terrio and said that she had prepared a lighter as a gift for each of her friends. Danny was thrilled to own one of these 5 magical artifacts. Iris went through the components of the lighter wick, base, cotton, and counted out loud how much it cost. Ree asked why she was doing it. Iris replied that her gift was nothing compared to what her friends had given her. She said that the garden was just beautiful and thanked everyone because they had planted those flowers with their own hands, showing their care for her. Anakin replied that Iris deserved so much more. Ree remembered that they didn't plant all the flowers themselves because there were so many of them, but they followed every step, from buying the flowers to planting them. Jan worked the hardest, he always thought ahead, but he was never as focused as he had been that night. Then Ian got the sleepy rest of his friends up and convinced them to help plant the central flower bed, for the second Solia exam meeting was due to start in just 5 hours, and if they hired gardeners, there would be unnecessary rumours. They had to make it in time. The next day at the Imperial Palace, Duke Valencia and Ree Morgan were meeting with the ambassadors from Raisin. Ree was thinking about the fact that the ambassadors were uncooperative, and if the ambassadors didn't like something, it would be refused. The Duke was thinking about the fact that Loneheim's industry and military power was losing significantly to Raisin. In turn, Raisin was limited in magical capabilities. The Emperor had hinted in advance that he would support whoever conquered the Raisin mages. So the ambassadors were the key to power. No wonder they were so arrogant. The ambassador stopped the writing secretary, asking if they were still writing in ink. Then, Count Lothan, the ambassador, showed what pens were available in Rasen that emitted ink when pressed. He said that anything was possible because Lowenheim had excellent magicians. The ambassador's arrogance was watched by Ree and Yang. They knew that if it wasn't for Yunho McCartney, their country wouldn't be so great. Jan noted that the ambassadors were acting very cocky when representing their empire. He realised that things were not going well, so he asked his subject to bring a lighter. So that everyone could see it, Jan lit the cigarette of the neighbour sitting next to him. The ambassadors watched in amazement as he managed to get the fire. Sophie later told Iris that she had heard how ambassadors were amazed when Lord Morgan and the Duke of Valencia used the lighters at the reception. Rita was very proud of her mistress, and it was hard for her not to tell everyone that Iris was the one who had created the lighters. Rita asked why the previous spellcasters hadn't created a lighter, since they already had fuel. Rita remembered that Iris had said that they avoided anything that could become a weapon, and worried if the idea would end up the same way. Iris said that any of the artifacts in evil hands could become weapons. Iris arrived at the Imperial Palace again, at the invitation of Queen Lisa. The Queen wanted Iris to spend some time with Lord Griffin. The Queen also gave Iris many gifts, but everyone realised that she wanted to charm Iris and make her her niece. In one of the corridors, Iris met Marianne Commandi and her entourage, who had just left the Queen's chambers. Marianne Commandi asked Iris if she was going back to the Queen. Iris replied that she was also on her way back from the Queen. Marianne said she made the visit because she was concerned about Queen Lisa's reputation because of the bias of the second Solia exam. Marianne said she was worried about order in high society. Sophie realised that Lady Commandi had simply come to complain to the Queen that the Solia exam was biased. Iris responded by saying that the Commandi family had raised a beautiful heiress, and it was no wonder the Emperor and Empress loved her so much. Marianne was confused, thinking that Iris was scared of her and wanted to mend relations. Iris also said that she heard Marianne meeting privately with the ambassadors. Iris went on to say that she had received information that Commandy's father was investing a lot of money in Raisin, but he was losing money because he cared for his daughter. Marianne's eyes flashed, and she asked if Iris thought her father had bribed the ambassadors and she would not allow her family to be insulted like that. Iris said that was not what she meant at all, to which Lady Commandy replied, since the Solia exam assessed one's ability to use social skills and personal connections, it was only natural that one would use one's possessions. A girl from Commandy's entourage stopped her speech. This was going too far. This girl thought about how badly Lady Commandy makes them look by complaining to the Empress and saying such words, while Iris remains radiant. Iris said that she was just jealous of Marianne because she had parents who loved her, said goodbye and left. Marianne's entourage called Iris defiant and tried to calm her down, for the Queen promised to think about what she had said to her. After Marianne told the Queen her side of the story, she would not be so favourable to Iris. Marianne thought that since she was the only daughter of Commandy, she should get the position of Solia at any cost. Iris was met by the Queen's maid to escort her to the reception room. Miss Forrest asked the maid if Lord Griffin would be there and was told that another guest would be there. Iris was surprised at that. Sophie and Rita were left waiting for the hostess to enter. When Iris entered, she saw Countess Griffin, Howard's mother. From her past life, Iris remembered how her mother-in-law had taken her pregnant Iris to a strange doctor and forced her to get rid of the child, saying she would not allow her grandchild to be born to a traitor. Iris had struggled to get out of their hands, and the Countess had cursed her afterward. Iris tried to calm down. Countess Griffin wouldn't do anything to her as long as Queen Lisa was on her side. Iris bowed and said she was honoured to be invited. Iris thought about Queen Liza oppressing Queen Elijah's house, which is the most powerful family after the Duke of Valencia. Iris also thought about the fact that the Griffin family couldn't compare in their history to the family of Empress Elijah, and it's understandable why they want to get the title of Marquess that Iris holds. The Griffins used to be vassals of House Luttrell, and only became viscounts a few centuries ago. Countess Griffin asked Iris why Duke Macartney had called her a spellcaster. It became clear to Iris why this woman is here. Queen Liza is hesitant to ask Iris this question personally, because it is a rumour, and she invited the Countess here to ask Iris. Iris also realised that Empress Lisa would need her much more if she turned out to be a spellcaster. Besides, many people who keep Iris's abilities secret would be able to help her with the exam, so everything could be revealed now. Iris confirmed that she is a spellcaster. The Queen was overjoyed, thinking that Iris was a diamond that would turn into a diamond under her guidance. The Queen grabbed and squeezed Iris's hand, saying that she had many difficulties ahead of her, but if she faced them, she could turn to the Queen at any time, especially since they would soon be twinned. Iris expressed her gratitude. The next day, Lady Commandy came to the Empress again with tears and a letter in her hands. Marianne said that her father was shocked when he received the letter about her daughter's inappropriate behaviour. It said that she was unable to control herself. The Queen said that Lady Commandy had behaved inappropriately. Lady Commandy's entourage did not understand that yesterday Lady Forrest could have told the Queen that her behaviour had changed so much. Even yesterday the Queen was telling Marianne that she understood her. The girls defended Marianne, recounting how insolent Iris had been and what she had said. They said they were discouraged by how arrogant she was. The Queen ordered them to shut up. She said that she had long tolerated their behaviour out of respect for their parents, but now their insolence was out of line. How dare they barge into her chambers and complain? Suddenly the Queen noticed a girl she had not seen before. The girl introduced herself as Nera Michala. The Queen asked if she was related to Iris, to which Nera replied that Iris was her cousin, and they were as close as sisters. The Queen then asked how Nera dared to come to the palace and accuse Lady Forrest of cheating. Nera began to apologise, saying she had come without thinking. Nera also apologised for not stopping the others. She said that she was very worried about Iris, but these girls were her close friends, so she couldn't refuse them, because everyone was preparing for the Solia exam day and night. Nera apologized for a long time and asked the Queen not to be angry. The Queen let them go. As they left the reception room, Lady Commandy began to cry out about the injustice, for Miss Forrest had managed to win the Queen over to her side, and it was Marianne who used to be her favourite. Nera intervened, saying that the Queen was wise and would make the right decision. Nera also said that the girls were too kind to Iris, for she did not watch her words and did not think of others at all. She did not even call them to meet Duke Macartney. Suddenly, the girls' gaze turned to the passing new head of the royal guard. The girls started discussing how handsome he was, and the rumours about him weren't lying. The whispers continued about the rumour that he was the adopted son of the Forrest family. The girls turned to Nera to ask if it was true that it was her cousin. Nera called Anakin by name and threw herself into his arms, screaming how much she missed him. Anakin pushed Nera away and said irritably that he shouldn't throw himself so carelessly at an armed knight. Nera turned to the girls, saying that he was so tense because he was on duty. He wasn't like this before. It's so adorable. The companions asked Nera what Anakin is like normally. Nera said that he was very kind and had adored her since childhood, and that he really only loved her. The companions thought that Anakin must like any girl younger than him. One of the girls, Lady Caton, said she would send Nera an invitation to the reception and that she should bring Anakin along. A few days later, at Lady Caton's reception, the nobles wondered what Nera was doing here, as she had never been seen in such circles before, and only aristocrats could be present. They also whispered that Lady Michala was close to the head of the royal guard, which explained her presence. Lady Caton hoped that if she could communicate with Anakin, she could get closer to Ian, Lord Morgan, and Terrio Opal. Nera was offered a drink. Everyone was favourable to her, and she was plotting how to continue to manipulate everyone. The Duchess of Winheit entered the hall. Winheit was incorporated into Lowenheim only 60 years ago, and is considered a subject of the Empire. But instead of paying taxes, Winheit cooperates with the Empire. Nera thought about the fact that although it is a small territory, it produces the most iron and electric stones, so everyone worships Duke Oscar Winheit. Nera noted that Duke Winheit had the same ruby-coloured eyes as Iris. Only 2 people in the kingdom had that eye colour. The Winheits had no children, and if Nera's plan succeeded and she became like a daughter to them, she would gain their power in high society. Even Iris would be no match for her. In the kitchen of Forest Manor, the maids were discussing how cold it was in the house. Apparently it was going to rain soon and the wind was picking up. In the hallway, Iris met Viscount Hagos. She was surprised that there were no meetings scheduled for today, and reminded Hagos that she had told him not to visit the manor without an appointment. The Viscount said there was good news he'd come to tell, and handed Iris an envelope. Hagos added that the Griffin family had sent her a marriage proposal. Iris thought how quickly everything happened. The proposal came 3 years earlier than in her previous life. Iris told Hagos to go back to her estate. Hagos said that the wedding gifts had just arrived, and the givers needed nothing in return. He insisted that Iris write back immediately. Iris replied that she hadn't made a final decision yet. The Viscount turned pale, asking if that meant Iris would not marry Howard. Iris realised that no matter what Hagos would do, still the quickest way to get revenge was to marry Howard. She must get engaged to him, become a Solia, and after that she will catch Nehru and Howard together and demand a divorce. In marriage, she will make a detailed plan and figure out their weaknesses. Viscount Hagos asked where Iris planned to find a family capable of giving House Forrest more power than House Griffin. Hagos shouted for him to come to his senses, shouting that he had had enough of Iris's arrogance, which he had tolerated because he thought she was worried about the engagement. Hagos said that Iris is too young to be the head of the family, and there is not a shred of nobility left in her house. If Iris didn't marry Griffin, there would be nothing left but to raise the tax rate to provide for her estate. Then the real tyranny would begin. Iris gritted her teeth. Miss Forrest was not prepared to tolerate such treatment. She said she never spent money on useless things, on dresses, expensive shoes, or precious things. None of these things interested her. Nor did she ever abandon the household. She never once made her subordinates suffer, blinded by greed. Iris always knew Hagos was that kind of person. After all, Hagos has a granddaughter Iris's age. The other vassals have daughters and grandchildren too, so why would they do this to her? Iris said that her house was the source of money for the Viscounts, and in return behind her back, they took all the money away from her and destroyed her family. The Viscount looked at Iris indifferently and said that if she had proof of her words, she couldn't sue him, especially since he had served the Forest family all his life. Iris said that people like him never change. The Viscount replied that apparently the Solia exam had tired Iris and clouded her mind. Apparently she needed to rest away from everything, and when he spoke to the vassals, they would find her a suitable place. Viscount Hagos left. Anakin's man was supposed to be guarding Iris. She instructed Sophie to find him and give him the assignment to follow Hagos. Sophie wondered if he was going to be spied on, but Iris had instructed that Hagos be locked up in the basement of the news agency, saying that the Viscount needed a vacation away from everything. The Viscount was grabbed and led to the basement. He was sure that Iris couldn't hurt him. She was probably acting reckless because of the words he said to her. Iris's guard said that it was unbecoming for such a powerful man to look so pathetic. It would be better for him to fall on his knees and beg for mercy. The Viscount had his gag pulled out of his mouth and screamed, "How dare Iris behave like that? Has she gone mad?" He also said that he wouldn't report this to the police if they let him go now. Iris thought that this man was incapable of listening to her in her past life, and remained so now. Iris remembered that when Howard had been having an affair with Nera, they'd walked around the estate hand in hand, and it had been Hagos who'd sided with Nera. Iris had trusted him, but the Viscount had spread a rumour that it was Iris who was cheating on her husband. Hagos persuaded Iris to admit her guilt then. She would have to pay for her inaction. He said that Miss Nera was more suitable for Howard, and Iris was a victim, so let her sacrifice herself. Hagos was always self-loving, never hesitating before committing an atrocity. Iris decided that she had no choice either. She would not hesitate, and ordered to cut off the Viscount's tongue. Iris's gaze was full of determination. You can't bluff with a gaze like that. She was serious. The Viscount was frightened, apologising to Iris if he had hurt her with his words. He wondered if Iris no longer needed him. If the other vassals found out what had happened, they would rebel. He didn't get a chance to say anything. Iris took a knife and cut off Hagos's tongue. Iris had time to tell him that the vassals would hear how, after their conflict at the manor, Hagos couldn't control his anger and tried to kill Iris, so she ordered the Viscount locked in the dungeon. Iris walked alone in the rain. She thought about the fact that if she had been smarter from the start, maybe this old man Viscount wouldn't have had to spend the rest of his days in the dungeon. She thought about the fact that if the revenge she had planned was now accomplished, why she felt no relief. There was only guilt. Jan caught up with her and asked why she was alone, since she was on his property, and he couldn't help but find out what had happened. Jan asked how Iris was feeling. She replied that she should be fine because this man had done much worse to her, but she didn't feel fine. Iris said she didn't understand why she felt so bad, why she was like this. Ian lifted her chin, told her he didn't know how to comfort her, and kissed her. They stood in the rain for a long time, and he kept telling her that everything would be all right. Walking away, Iris turned around and looked Ian in the eyes. She remembered that look she had seen as a child. Iris remembered that when she was a child, there was a place she called a mountain. It was a temple built to honour the previous rulers. Iris remembered the time when Jan was 9 years old. One day he ran away from the servants, thinking that his teachers Sebastian and Anna were picking on him a lot. Besides, the king often told him that if he studied too much, mould would grow on his head, and that a normal child should run and play. Jan's father showed him a secret hiding place where he used to hide various objects when he was a child. On his way to his father's hiding place that day, he found little Iris crying. She was calling for her parents and brother. He asked who she was and why she was here alone, but the girl cried even harder. Then she told him that she had done something for which she would be scolded and decided to leave alone, walked a long way and got lost. Jan told her to be quiet so that the servants would not come crying and catch him. Jan told little Iris that he had lots of funny things in his hiding place by the lake, and he would take her to play with him. Iris heard nothing, kept sobbing and calling for her brother. Ian managed to calm her down, promising to take care of her and find her parents. Iris said she still had to find Anakin, Tata, and Sophie. Iris walked slowly and lagged behind, so Ian told her to hurry up, or not to follow him at all. Iris ran after him, shouting that she was tired. Jan realized that he would not reach the lake that day, so he had to take Iris in his arms. While carrying Iris in his arms, Jan told her that she should be grateful to him, because his body was priceless. Iris replied that she was important too. Jan kept saying that he was more important, because on his birthday, all the people came to worship in front of the palace. But Iris didn't give up. She said that her daddy was brushing her hair. The little prince did not realize whether the girl was serious or joking. At last he carried Iris to the lake. She was heavy. When Iris stepped on the ground, she ran across the clearing, and Jan fell on his back, thinking about how tired he was now. Ian lay there looking up at the sky, looking at the clouds, and thinking of what they looked like. Suddenly, Iris leaned over him. One cloud looked a lot like her. Iris said she found something and showed Ian the frog. The frog jumped on his head. Iris laughed, saying it was adorable and shiny. Ian shook the frog off his head, but Iris brought it up to him again, trying to prove that it was cute. Suddenly the frog jumped out of her hands, and Jan shrieked at the mention of his mother. He immediately covered his mouth with his hands and sat down. Iris asked what was wrong, why he was upset. Maybe because his daddy would be upset that he called his mummy. But Ian answered that his dad is always sad when he remembers his mom. Jan said that his mother had died giving him life. Ian was crying, but he tried not to cry. Iris came over to him, wiped away his tears, and repeated several times that everything was all right. Anakin called out to Iris, and she ran to him. But the words of comfort stayed in Ian's heart for the rest of his life. Iris sat by the window and thought about the fact that she had been kissed by the Duke of Valencia himself. She remembered his scent when their lips had touched, his arms around her waist, the warmth in his gaze as he looked at her. She remembered him saying that she had done nothing wrong. He told her not to cry alone, that if anyone dared to say she had done wrong, he would personally make them believe she was right. He said that seeing her suffer was more painful than being strangled or wounded by a sword. Rita interrupted her thoughts. Rita asked if Iris's lips were sore because she had noticed that her mistress had been touching them all day. Iris said it was fine, but Rita insisted that if anything bothered Iris to tell her, she had lip balm that the landlady had given her. Iris asked to prepare a carriage for the trip to the news agency. Sophie walked in and said that everyone seemed to think that Iris was going to be a solitaire. Sophie placed an envelope on the table, saying it was from the Griffin family. Perhaps they are worried that Iris has not yet responded to their marriage proposal in writing. Sophie said she shouldn't say that, but she couldn't keep quiet because Iris didn't really like Lord Griffin. Iris sighed, saying that it was the life of aristocrats. Sophie replied that to her, Iris is not just a noblewoman. She is her only mistress and Sophie will always protect her. Sophie said she can't see Iris in pain because she's been watching for a long time and knows her like no one else. She said she knows that Iris's heart belongs to someone else because lately she looks like a little girl who has fallen in love for the first time. And her chosen one is not Howard. Iris said that Sophie was wrong, said goodbye and walked out. But in her mind, she was thinking that now was not the best time to pay attention to men, because the Solia exam was just around the corner. If she paid attention to such things, she would repeat her unfortunate fate again. At the news agency, Iris was met by Danny and Terrio. She asked if her order was ready, and the guys pointed to the table. Iris picked up the hand warmers. She wanted the soldiers to be more comfortable in the winter, especially Anakin. By creating hand warmers, the soldiers would not suffer from frostbite during winter training. Danny asked why none of the previous spellcasters had created anything like this. To this, Iris replied that they were under pressure. Iris thought to herself that another reason was that Yunho McCartney, aka Park Yunho, was an outstanding programmer and inventor. By the time he was able to get information on a smartphone from another world, he had already lived in it for 60 years and was 80 at the time. Because of his age, it was difficult for him to create earthly technology. He did manage to create a heater. It was a necessity for the northern inhabitants. But the other spellcasters didn't have a smartphone, and Park Yunho had to invent things on his own based on his knowledge. Iris asked Danny to make more warming pads. He wondered if she wanted to release them to the public. Danny was glad, because it would be a hit. Meanwhile, the Duke of Valencia was meeting with ambassadors from Rasen at the imperial palace. Valencia was signing a contract stating that the right to develop electric stones would pass from the Valencia and Morgan houses to the McCartney house. There is a rule in this world that says that whoever mines electric stones has the right to sell them. It was a tempting offer for Rasen, because this was a northern state and fuel was always in short supply. If a deal was struck, they would receive huge quantities of stones. Also, the ambassadors realized that it wasn't just about the deal, it was about the McCartney family. If the state wanted to make an alliance with Rasen, his confidants should contact the king through McCartney. It doesn't matter the benefit of the deal if it will be useless to the king. Duke McCartney was thinking that if all the stones were given to their family, how would they make a deal with the king? Perhaps it was a trap. Duke Valencia, looking at the faces of the ambassadors, told them not to look for a trick, because a deal with the king is not what he wants. The ambassadors were surprised and asked what he wanted. Valencia said that the request is that the ambassadors have the right to decide who will take the second Solier exam. Asking who should be chosen, the Duke said Iris Forrest. The ambassadors couldn't get a word in edgewise. Just for the sake of it, such an unthinkable deal was done. The ambassadors said that in that case it was a bribe, but Ian replied that they had already received plenty of them, so what difference would it make if he offered another one? Duke McCartney asked Valencia why he was going to this for some sort of Solier exam. Ian replied that for the sake of this girl not meeting any obstacles in her way. Sophie told Iris that the carriage was ready, and it was time to go to the interview room. Iris thought about the fact that the final of the second exam was near, and that the outcome depended not only on her, but also on one other person. A few days later, Nera approached Iris at the imperial palace before the second Solier exam. She said that she wanted to go to the palace with Iris, but she had left early. Nera said that she had spent a long time researching all the information about Rasen, but she hadn't found much. When she saw the envelope with her report in Iris's hands, Nera reached for it, saying she wanted to see it, but Iris slapped her hand. A hurt Nera said that her cousin's behaviour was strange, as if she was getting further and further away from her. Iris replied with a smile that she would never do that. Iris thought back to her past life and wondered why things had happened the way they had. Why she withers in the manor and sees her cousin smiling after kissing Howard. Iris saw her uncle and aunt quietly watching her mother-in-law and sister-in-law abuse her while Iris was pregnant. Iris wished she knew why Nera and the others were doing this to her. She hoped she would stop hating them when she knew the truth. Iris was sure that if she did wrong, she would be able to bear the pain and loneliness. But it was the same day after day. One day, Iris witnessed a conversation in which Howard told the pregnant Nera that as soon as she left, he would miss her and their child. Iris tried to tolerate this too. She couldn't leave her family because of her child. After all, she was pregnant too. She couldn't disappoint the people of the forest house who were relying on her. One day, Nera entered Iris's room, walked up to her, stroked her belly with a smile, and wished death upon her and her child. Nera said that Iris, being the heiress of the House of Marquis, was a test and a gift sent from heaven. Said it was a test for her to receive what was rightfully hers. But in her new life, Iris is determined to ruin their plans. She promptly said goodbye to Nera and left. As she entered the hall, Iris smelled the odour and saw the Solier applicants offering various dishes to the ambassadors, urging them to eat at least a bite, for it was a long journey. Lady Rowena came up to Iris and said that the girls must be trying to imitate Miss Forrest, but this was not a banquet hall. Do they really have to go to such lengths to gain favour? So desperate are these girls. One of the girls stepped forward and asked the others to stop and return to their seats. But others insisted, saying that it was natural for them to serve the Emperor's honoured guests. It was very important and kind of them. They were told that the applicants for the Solier represented the Empire, so they should refrain from any action that might dishonour the Queen. Nera intervened in the conversation, saying that she should not emphasise anyone's greatness, since Rasen and Lowenheim were allies, and that it was rude to say such things in front of Rasen's ambassadors. The girl started to justify that she hadn't said anything bad about Rasen, but Nera continued, bowing. She apologised for the words of insult to Rasen. Witnessing what was happening, Lady Rowena realized how cunning and clever Nera was. Neither of the girls had tested Raisin, but just a few words from Nera's mouth made their actions seem like an insult. Nera interested the ambassadors, and they thought of her nobility, for it was not easy to bow for another's mistakes. They asked her to introduce herself, and Nera bowed and gave her name. The ambassadors said they had never heard of the House of Michala before. Nera explained that the Marquis Forest was her uncle, who had taken care of her since she was a child. Nera said she had been sitting on her uncle's lap since she was a child, listening to him talk about Raisin's amazing and incomprehensible beauty. She thought to herself that she had cleverly wiped Iris's nose with her skill in the art of conversation. But Iris's face was indifferent, as if she didn't care. Neru was angry. Without listening to Neru, Iris turned to Rowena, telling her that the discussion would begin soon, and they went together to the Great Hall. The ambassadors opened the envelope and announced the topic of discussion, which sounded like a new kind of energy that could be a substitute for electric stones. The topic announced by the ambassadors shocked the girls. No one was ready. Rowena had never thought that there would be such a topic. As the discussion between the ambassadors of Raisin and the young men of Lowenheim was announced, everyone thought that the topic would be the relationship between the two countries. The ambassador explained that the reason the topic was chosen was because with the amount of power stones they have now, they would not last a century, and finding a replacement source is a challenge that all nations face. Even though magicians are looking for alternatives, energy works differently on every continent. One of the ambassadors asked the First Lady Commandi what she thought about it, but she had no answer. The ambassadors were waiting for her to say a few words, however foolish, for they had made a bargain with her father that they would be lenient to his daughter and recommend her for the position of solitaire. The ambassador took turns questioning the girls, but no one was able to answer. Iris was looking for information on her smartphone and thought that the only people who cared about this issue were mages. Noble people would not feel the need to develop the stones, as people of lower status were responsible for it. When it was Iris's turn, she said that solar energy was an alternative. The ambassador replied that he was not sure about this assumption, because solar energy could not replace the electric stones. Iris asked for a few minutes to present the evidence. The ambassador was confused as to how Iris could have prepared in advance, since he had come up with the topic of conversation only minutes before the exam. Iris searched her smartphone for videos of turbines using solar energy to generate electricity. Afterward, she suggested looking at the pictures. Iris accidentally pressed the wrong button. Turning on the video, a human voice came out of the smartphone. There were screams and noise all around that it was a ghost. Iris apologized, remembering that there were music boxes in this world, but no artifacts that recorded the human voice. Iris tried to explain that it was not a ghost. She was interrupted by Duke Macartney, who said she was holding the treasure that was in the portrait of Yunho Macartney's ancestor. He said that since she could use the treasure, she was a spellcaster. Iris confirmed that she was a spellcaster. She understood that the Solia exam tested social skills and intelligence. But if a family wasn't high in society, even passing the exam wouldn't make one a Solia. It was to Iris's advantage for everyone to reveal that she was a spellcaster. It would reinforce her status. One of the girls stood up and said that Miss Forest is a close friend of the great magician Lord Opal, who can make any number of amazing magical artifacts. But another girl stood up and said that Opal admitted that he was not a descendant of the caster and that Duke Macartney called the item a treasure. Iris approached the ambassadors, putting her smartphone on the table, and offered to let them see a photo of a way to develop solar energy. Iris said that if they started using solar energy to spin turbines and generate electricity, the energy could be transmitted. Iris outshined everyone again. After the exam, there were whispers that Iris would become a Solia. Others said that it was impossible to say for sure, because there was also Lady Commandi, but she could not keep the conversation going during the exam. The girls were sure that Lady Commandi's father would not stay away and influence the decision. Lady Rowena looked at Iris and wondered how she could stay so calm, for every time Rowena herself was discussed or criticised, her heart jumped out of her chest. Rowena walked up to Iris and said that she was amazing and outshone everyone today. Iris was surprised and asked why Rowena said that. Rowena continued. She said that even if Lady Commandi becomes a solitaire, nothing will change for her. She understands how hard it is for Iris to be strong all the time, and that Iris can always count on her support. Iris replied that she was happy to have a friend who cared about her. Rowena was touched that Iris called her a friend. She had never imagined that Iris considered her a friend. They hugged. Iris's life has changed because the people she wants to protect also want to protect her. In 2 weeks' time, the results of the examination would be announced. Lady Commandi and her friends gathered to discuss what had happened. Marianne was upset, but was comforted by the fact that she had passed the second stage of the exam. Marianne was not happy about this, for the whole capital was discussing Iris and pitying her, as she was an orphan. Lady Commandi cried, asking what she was doing wrong, and if it was not natural for her father to help her. There were rumours in the city that Commandi's father had made a personal deal with the Empress, and he was also to blame for the Empire being at a technological disadvantage this time. It was clear to everyone that Lord Commandi did not care about the future of the Empire when it came to the welfare of his daughter. People in the capital thought it was unfair that Marianne was being allowed to take the third exam, because she couldn't answer anything in the second exam. People in the capital condemned her and her father. Marianne thought those who judged her were damaged people, because they had no one to help them, and that was why they took their anger out on the poor and unhappy Lady Commandi. She thought that she was just jealous of them. All her friends sat and nodded in agreement, though they were bored of listening to her complaints. At the same time, in the office of the news agency, Ree, Danny and Theriot were discussing that Iris had also passed the second Solier exam because she had excelled in the discussion. Danny said he was proud of her, and Ree asked why he was proud of what Iris had accomplished on her own. Danny talked about how, if he knew it would work out, they wouldn't have had to make a deal. In that case, there was no point in giving the electric stones to Raisin to make Iris a solitaire. They didn't notice Iris enter. She had heard their conversation. Iris asked what their conversation meant. Danny was confused, not knowing what to say, and tried to sneak away. But Iris demanded to be told about the deal with the electric stones. She realized she had become like Lady Commandi without knowing it. Ree said, "I was just trying to help." He added that the right to mine all the electric stones now belonged to Macartney. Iris realized that the deal was useless, since it was made with Macartney and not with the King of Raisin. Ian has nothing to offer the king, which means that he has refused to negotiate with the rulers of Raisin. Iris thought about Queen Lisa preparing for Prince Louis to become the heir to the throne. If Louis becomes emperor, the Queen will not leave Jan alone. This arrangement was highly disadvantageous to Ian, and he gave up the ace up his sleeve for the sake of the Solier exam. Iris was very grateful, but she couldn't leave things as they were. Miss Forrest went to meet the Raisin ambassadors. She was escorted to the Duke of Macartney. Iris apologised for requesting a meeting on such short notice, to which the Duke replied that he was sure she had a good reason for it. Iris thought of the Duke as a very thoughtful man. One of the ambassadors said that Macartney and Iris look very good together. They don't have too much of an age difference. Since the first Macartney was also a charmer, he suggested that it was fate. The Duke cut this speech short and asked Iris to cut to the chase. Iris thought about the fact that the ambassador, Earl Urs, was a real politician, and perhaps for that reason had accepted her request for a meeting. If she married Macartney, she would become a citizen of Raisin, and the state would gain another caster. Earl Urs asked what brought her. Iris asked permission to be the first to ask a question. She asked if she had been chosen to take the second Solier exam, because Valencia had made a deal with them. The ambassador replied that there was indeed a deal, but primarily because it was the purpose of their coming to Lowenheim. Iris said she didn't know the details of the deal, but she knew for a fact that they would change their minds if someone made them a better offer. Iris placed a hand warmer on the table. Macartney took the hand warmer and said that it might come in handy in a northern country like Raisin. Count Urs also appreciated the invention, thinking that since it could be carried around, many residents would want to buy it. He asked Iris if she thought that such a small object would replace the electric stones. Iris replied that according to her, Raisin had already gotten enough stones from the deal with the Emperor. She asked the ambassadors why they need more power stones from the Morgan and Valencia houses. Count Urs replied that the more resources, the better. Iris replied that with that stance, Raisin would inevitably run out of resources, which is why he was so eager to develop new ways to extract energy. Duke Macartney thought that if they took the stones from the Empire and the Morgan and Valencia houses, they would have no need to create new sources of energy, and in the future, development would cease altogether. In the future, when the resources do run out, their descendants will have no alternative sources. Iris suggested that the ambassadors renegotiate the agreement. Until an alternative energy source was discovered, Valencia House would give priority in selling its stones to Raisin, and the price would be set at the time of sale. Iris was sure that Ian would benefit from such a deal. Instead, she offered the ambassadors the rights to sell hand warmers, as it is a very useful item, and many people will want to buy them. It would help Raisin earn money to buy the stones. Iris said she would sell the hand warmers for only 10 Kessler apiece, but if the ambassadors are not interested, she will sell them to someone else. Count Urs asked for some time to think about it, while Duke Macartney said he thought it was a good deal and agreed. In return, Iris asked him to give her the contract signed with Ian. Iris sold the warmers so cheaply because it cost her almost nothing to make them, and even selling them for 10 Kessler each would bring her a profit. That same night, Iris came to the news agency, accompanied by Sophie. She had to give the contract to Jan today, because she wanted to finish the case as soon as possible. Iris asked Sophie to wait outside. Pulling the door open, it was unlocked, although there was no one in the fabric store. Iris wanted to just leave the contract and the note, but she saw Ian sitting in total darkness. Iris didn't want to meet him, because she thought she would take out her resentment on him. But in reality, she thought she wanted to touch him. Iris said she returned the contract he'd made with Duke Macartney and asked him never to do it again. Iris was about to leave, but Ian caught up with her, put his head on her shoulder, and asked her to stay. Iris thought his voice sounded tearful. Iris stroked his head and asked what was wrong. Ian said that today was the anniversary of his father's death, and also his birthday. The moment he said that, Iris remembered her parents talking about it when she was little. Ian said that Iris was the first person to stroke his head since his father died. Iris thought about how after her parents died, her house seemed big and shiny, but no matter how brightly the lights burned, the shadows remained just as dark. She hadn't realised how big and lonely the Imperial Palace had become for Ian. Iris was with him until late at night. Sophie had already knocked on the door twice, and Iris had to go. Iris realised that if someone came in here, they wouldn't be able to come up with an excuse. She could be in trouble. Ian stood up and asked if he wasn't good enough for her. Ian also said he didn't know how she felt, but he couldn't let her see other men. Iris said he was confused, perhaps because of the day, and added that she wasn't a good enough woman to be with him. Jan says he doesn't want a good one. He wants Iris. Suddenly a light flashed on, and Danny entered the room. He asked Iris what she was doing here. Iris broke free from Jan's embrace and quickly went outside. Sophie said she was already expected. Duke Valencia remained sitting still and thinking about her. A few weeks later, the Raisin ambassadors were returning to their country. Count Valencia and R. Morgan arrived at the Imperial Palace before the appointed time and decided to stop by to see Anakin. R. noted that Ian hadn't smiled once in these days. Ian didn't know what had happened to him. Rhea and Ian knocked and entered Anakin's office. He was packing something in a bag. Anakin said he kept getting strange things sent to him: letters, flowers, cookies. Since he got the position, he has been getting dozens of letters. Anakin revealed that he once followed a maid who was dropping off letters to him. He asked who ordered her to do it. The maid said it was love and ran away. Rhea picked up one of the letters and it was a declaration of love. Rhea asked if it was a coded message, but Anakin showed him the mountains of flowers. He said he thought the flowers were poisonous and the food was poisoned. Someone wanted to kill him. But Rhea asked if an assassin would try to kill him so nicely. Rhea thought about how when Anakin was a child, he didn't know anyone but his sister because he never left the manor. Later, growing up, he only knew the battlefield, so he was a total zero in love affairs. Rhea wondered why he was surrounded by such people. One was obsessed with money, another lived for cookies, and the third and fourth were Iris fans. Ree thought that in this case, he was crazy too. Ree tells Anakin that he needs to become more independent of Iris. If this continues, Anakin will be a loner for the rest of his life. Anakin replied that he would not marry or leave Iris, unless Iris marries someone who meets his standards. When asked what his standards were, Anakin began to list that Iris's chosen one must be strong, but not just a mountain of muscle. He must also be handsome, and he must have a versatile personality. For him, Iris must come first, because he would not tolerate her being hurt. Anakin's list was very long, and Ree thought they'd come to him for a minute and be stuck with him for a long time. After all, the guy was hopeless. Ree asked Ian what he thought of Iris's qualities. Anakin said he wasn't interested in the opinion of a womanizer like Ian. Everything Anakin listed, Ian wrote down. At the reception to bid the ambassadors farewell, Anakin wished Count Ursa a happy journey, to which the latter replied that they had only used his hospitality, but had done nothing useful. Instead of Empress Lisa, Earl Griffin came to the ambassadors. He asked them to convey his intentions to the King of Raisin. Griffin also added that if all went well, an entire nation would have access to new technology. Ree thought about how even the Griffin family had done everything possible in the negotiations, while Ian had stood idly by while the ambassadors were here. After the King of Raisin mentioned the Empress, Prince Louis is one step closer to the throne. But Earl Griffin had no idea what was really going on. Soon, everyone was about to learn the names of the people who held great places in the hearts of the leaders of Raisin, Duke Macartney and his counsellor, Earl Urs. At this moment, Count Urs was thinking about Duke Valencia. Urs thought Ian was a wonderful man, for his sake, Lady Forest had given Raisin the rights to the handwarmers, while Count Valencia was willing to give up the rights to his electric stones so that Iris could pass the Solia exam. Count Urs felt that the two were not exactly having a normal relationship. Ian, talking to Duke Macartney, whispered to him to be more careful and not to let him take anything out of his hands. The Duke replied for Ian not to worry, because he wasn't that weak. Macartney thought Ian was the only one who didn't treat him like a child throughout the visit. Duke Macartney made a personal request to Ian. He asked him to give Iris the pizza recipe and to thank her on his behalf, and he gave Valencia a pouch and asked her to keep it. When Jan looked into the pouch, he saw the legacy of the first Duchess, the magician's wife. Macartney said it's just an ornament, but thinks it would be perfect for the two of them, Ian and Iris. Valencia asked why Macartney was giving him his family's treasure. Macartney replied that he realised something after seeing Lady Forest's treasure. A thing always finds its owner. Jan and Ree stood seeing off the ambassador's carriage. Ree said that Duke Macartney will gain more power when he grows up. Also, he asked what she gave to Jan. Ian took out a smartphone and a note in Raisin's language. The note said that the first Duke and Duchess called it paired phones. For a while, Iris didn't want to see Ian until she'd sorted out her feelings for him. But Danny sent her a letter telling her that Ian had gotten a treasure like hers. Danny invited her into the office of the news agency. Iris realised that by treasure, Danny meant a smartphone, but she didn't understand how Jan had found it. Iris went to the news agency with thoughts that Park Yunho had left a lot of information in her smartphone and needed to check if the information was in Yang's smartphone. She was met by Ree Morgan, noting that they hadn't seen each other for 10 days, and asked how she was feeling since she was pale. Walking down the long corridors, Iris thought about how the secret path to the office was always tedious, but this walk with Ree was much better. She noted that Ree used the right words regardless of the conversation, that he had a great sense of humour. Ree had a knack for seducing people. Entering the office, Iris saw Ian. Their eyes met. Ree realised that something had happened between them. Ian said he had left the necessary documents in the carriage and asked Ree to go get them. Lord Morgan looked at Iris and said he would get the documents and come back. Iris felt awkward, wishing that Ree would come back soon. Seeing her confusion, Ian told her not to wait for Morgan, because if he came back, he'd have to go out again. Iris asked Ian why he had sent him, if it was on purpose. Jan replied that he didn't like having Ree around Iris. Iris realised that Jan had heard her and Ree laughing while walking down the hall. That's why Ian is being rude now. Iris said that Anakin was busy at the palace, but maybe Lord Opal and Danny could join them. Ian replied that he had forbidden them to come. Iris was embarrassed again. He asked why she had a guilty look on her face. At that moment, she thought about the fact that she was too focused on herself. On the day of their last meeting, Jan hadn't exactly confessed to anything, and maybe she was putting a lot of importance on what had happened. In any case, she decided that she hadn't come here to find out about the relationship. Iris said she had heard that Jan had a magical artifact that looked like a smartphone and asked to see it. Jan held it out to her and said that since he wasn't a magician, he couldn't make it work, and maybe it wasn't what Iris called a smartphone at all. She asked if Ian had tried to turn it on, but she realised from his reaction that he hadn't. The two phones fit together like a puzzle, and Iris realised that when they touched, one was charging from the other. Iris managed to turn on the smartphone. It only had 2 apps. She thought about the fact that her phone had an app like this one, but when she tried to use it, she failed. Maybe now she could use it. Iris entered a name and wrote a couple words. A message came up on Ian's phone. It was an app for 2 phones. She asked Ian where he had gotten it, to which he replied that it was a gift from the Duke of Macartney and that the phone belonged to Junho Macartney's wife. Iris told Ian that this phone did not have the same functions as hers, but it could be used for communication. Jan was very surprised. Iris told him that it was a letter that was spelled the way everyone was used to and explained how he could send her messages. She also taught him how to use the camera. But Ian can only use it while it is charged. Iris's phone will need to be charged. Duke said that it's Iris who fills it with magic. That same evening, Iris received a message on her smartphone, in which Jan asked how she had gotten home. After that day, they often texted each other. Jan asked Iris if she had eaten, if she was tired, what kind of tea she was drinking, and what she was doing. Iris did not understand how they exchanged messages, because there was no cellular communication in the world. Iris thought about maybe being overly sensitive, and that day he was just concerned about the anniversary of his father's death. Ian kept trying to guffaw and looked awkward. Iris convinced herself that Ian was friendly and just looking out for her. That time she got it all wrong. The next day, Ian didn't take his eyes off the phone. Ree and Danny thought he would break his eyes if he sat like that for another hour. Terrio assumed that the phone was broken because the number 1 beside his message had disappeared. But there was no reply to Jan's message. Ree wondered what was so special about that number. On the same day, Iris arrived at the Imperial Palace for the 3rd Solier exam. It was said that Iris and Marianne were not inferior to each other, as they had done very well in the previous exam. One of the girls asked Marianne if the 2nd exam had been difficult for her. Marianne answered that it was not easy. Iris was also asked how difficult the 2nd examination had been for her. Miss Forrest replied that if she failed it, she would not be able to help the Queen in her affairs in the future. Iris decided not to complain, for the aristocratic countesses would notice any fault in the candidate's manner and speech. The girls were given scrolls with the task for the next exam. They had to revamp the charity event and hold it before the end of the month. The Queen addressed the applicants, saying that a Solier's duty was to guide the high society and be a role model. Iris and Marianne bowed, thanking the Empress. In the evening, Iris pondered that the winner would be determined by the size of the donations. In Lowenheim, the money from the charity goes to help the poor, and the size of the donation is determined by how much the guest enjoyed the gift from the hostess of the evening. Iris knew that Kamandi had an advantage in this race. Iris determined that the most important thing was the number of guests and the choice of gift. To begin with, she decided to decorate the manor and prepare it for the party. Since the Viscountess ruled before, the house was full of rats and hadn't been renovated in 10 years, because Michala was only focused on her own benefit. Iris asked Sophie how much it cost to renovate the manor, and she said 10 or 20,000 castlers. Sophie also said they didn't have that money and should take some of her uncle's fortune, since it was a miracle that the servants' wages hadn't been cut. Iris tried to think of another way, because there was no money and only 2 weeks to prepare. She started searching on her smartphone how to decorate the garden and the interior, how to prepare gifts. A message came from Jan asking if she was asleep. Iris was so busy that she didn't reply to his last message. She wrote that she was awake and asked what was wrong. Jan wrote that they were changing the streetlights in the market area, and it would be dark for 2 days. asking Iris to be careful if she decided to go there. Iris said she wasn't even going to walk in the dark streets. But for Jan, it was just an excuse to start socializing. Suddenly it struck Iris that darkness was the idea for a party to avoid renovating the estate. Iris asked Sophie to find a catalogue with different types of light bulbs and bring it over. Iris had already figured out how to decorate the house and what to give the guests, because lights are not just for illumination. Nera walked drunkenly through the dark streets near the market. In the distance, she noticed young men flirting with each other. The girl, running away from the boys, accidentally pushed Nera, laughed, and immediately apologized to her. Nera said that a commoner dared not do such a thing and poured wine on her. Nera was angry. She hated everything, including Iris's name, because it was on the list of those who had passed the second Solia exam. She thought about how she couldn't stand the way everyone looked at Iris and called her a mage anymore. How a silly girl like Iris got everything Nera wanted. The doused girl demanded an apology from Nera. Nera slapped her in the face. In her anger, she kept thinking of Iris, whose mother had given her the title and Forest Manor, her father and brother who would do anything for her. Nera couldn't stand that even after losing her parents, Iris remained the head of the family and lived in comfort. In her thoughts, she thought that everything Iris had, she wasn't worthy of. It should belong to Nera. She woke up from her thoughts when the guy from the company grabbed her arm and demanded that she behave herself, told her that she should go home, and that even if she was drunk, she shouldn't be violent. The girl who had been hurt wanted to return the favor and swung at Nera, shouting that she could ruin her pretty face. A guy appeared from behind and turned to the girl named Sirasa, demanding that she stay out of his sight and not beat people up. The guy's name was Gioni, and Sirasa started to say that the redhead had offended her first. The company of people were frightened of Gioni and quickly fled. He turned to Nera, saying there was no need to thank him. Nera thought that she wasn't going to be grateful to this poor man. She glanced at the guy and assessed his appearance. The robe and sword weren't even worth 20 castlers. Gioni asked where she lived and if she could get home on her own. Nera started to leave, but he yelled back that if she worked in a pub, she shouldn't go there alone when she was drunk. Nera turned around and asked Gioni if he liked her. He was surprised. She was wobbly, so she couldn't stand on her feet. Nera thought that this guy was very even-looking. She asked him to take her to a pub where there were few people and stay with her. Nera woke up gloomy the next morning, but realized that Gioni had just put her to bed and left without even touching her. He had left a note, wishing to see her sober next time, also included a way to contact him and his address. Nera was pleased by that, but it wasn't something she chose to think about right now. A few days later at Commandi Manor, Marianne couldn't find a place to be. Her mother consoled her, telling her that she was close enough to most of high society, and most of the invitees were bound to attend. But Marianne wanted the evening at Iris's to fail completely. Marianne received a letter from Nera, in which she wrote that both Commandi and Forest were equally close to her heart, and she wanted to attend both events. Nera also wrote that if the dates of the parties coincided, she should attend Iris's party, as they were relatives. It struck Marianne, her eyes flashing. How could she not have thought of it herself? She thought about the fact that if she and Iris did the parties on the same day, the high-ranking ladies would choose her event over Iris, because they couldn't ignore Marianne's mother. She announced her decision to her mother. At Forest Manor, Sophie informed Iris that the sample gifts were ready. The preparation of the gifts was time-consuming. Iris checked on the preparations in the garden. Rita told her where the bulbs would be hung, and that flowers were due to be delivered soon. Iris said that everything was going according to plan. Rita also asked for some attention to Viscount Mort. He had become head of the Viscounts after the imprisonment of Hagos, and had been walking around the estate very anxious for several days now. He couldn't dare to approach Iris with a conversation. She suggested perhaps it was the lip balm again. When the Viscount approached Iris, he asked to be alone, but Iris said that her maids did not spread rumours, and he could speak in front of them. The Viscount fell to his knees in front of Iris and began to beg her to save him. From her past life, Iris remembered that Morta always walked around with an important face. Iris also recalled that he once embezzled a large sum of money and lost it gambling. after which he promised his wife that he would never gamble again. Instead of gambling afterwards, he began to get drunk with other viscounts who were gambling. The viscount asked Iris for money, saying that if he did, he would avoid a divorce. Iris said she should not interfere in their affairs. The viscount then asked for lip balm to make it up to his wife. Iris said that he had hurt the viscountess's feelings and one gift would not change her mind. The vicomte apologized for the indelicacy, got up and left. Rita followed him, saying that he had done nothing good for Iris to treat him so well. Iris remembered that Viscount Mortar was not a very nice man, but when his wife was very ill, he took care of her and nursed her back to health. She also knew that after that incident, he never gambled again. She thought about the fact that it was impossible to forget all the evil he had done, but to her he was just a thief who stole her house's money. Iris decided to help him. She called out to him, saying that she wanted to invite the Viscountess to the manor. Sophie was surprised at Iris's decision, but Iris said it was a good opportunity to test out the gifts for the fundraiser. Iris understood what the Viscountess was going through and wanted to make her a little happier. She said she would help him as much as she could as long as it wasn't to her detriment. The next day, the wives of the Viscounts gathered. They were uncomfortable at Iris's place. They had heard about her activating a magical artifact at a gathering of ambassadors from Raisin. Also, Iris had been looking different lately, perhaps because she was a mage. It also confused them that Anakin was a close friend of Lord Opal, a brilliant mage. Iris could feel the tense atmosphere. She expected it to be like this, but she was still glad that Viscountess Michala wasn't here. Iris felt sorry for Viscountess Mortar. After all, she had a hard time because of her husband. Iris ordered the maids to bring the gifts. Iris stood up and went to the Viscountess of Mortar and asked how she was feeling, for she looked pale. The Viscountess said she was fine and apologized for the trouble. Iris handed her a gift, saying it was to lift her spirits. The small bag contained cosmetics. Iris decided to help the Viscountess put makeup on her face. Iris said that the Viscountess was very beautiful when she smiled, not when her eyes were full of tears. Everyone present was touched by Iris's kindness. After she did the Viscountess's makeup, everyone was amazed at how beautiful she was. The girls were given their gifts. They were very pleased. Iris thought that this was all she could do for Viscountess Mortar. Perhaps gifts alone wouldn't fix the situation. Viscount Mortar suddenly came into the hall and said that he was just curious how their meeting was going. Iris thought he wanted to see if his wife was angry, but she didn't understand why he had come to a party for girls. At the sight of the Muse, the Viscountess became angry, asking how he dared to come to such a place. She ordered him to leave quickly, that she didn't accept his apology and didn't want to embarrass herself. Suddenly, the Viscountess stumbled back, caught the wine glass, and knocked it over her hands and face. Iris thought she had tripped accidentally. It was no one's fault. The Viscount ran up to her and began to calm her down. She coldly asked him not to look at her, because she seemed silly and pathetic. The Viscountess told her husband that he must be sure his wife cared only for her appearance, and that she would stop being angry with him for gambling if he came back to her with lip balm. But she didn't know any other way to keep pleasing him than to make herself up. She said that one day she realized that she hated not only her husband, but also herself, because her husband stopped looking at her because she was not good enough. The Viscount shuddered at her words. He said that there was a misunderstanding between them, and he never thought so, because she was beautiful and without makeup. His wife did not believe him. She asked if he remembered her first promise she had broken. It was 20 years ago. He was walking past a pale and frozen girl. The weather was chilly, and the girl had been doused with water from a window. He gave her his coat, and she asked him not to look at it as she was getting wet, so he walked her home without looking at her once. He said when she walked in he broke his promise and looked at her. Her face was sweet. He married her and never kept that promise again. The Viscount asked his wife for forgiveness, saying that he had been foolish, and now her heart was broken because of him. He apologized for his broken promise. The Viscount said that there was one more promise he wanted to keep until the very end, a promise of love until death do them part. He asked her to give him one more chance to keep that promise, because it wasn't just words to him, and promised that he would do anything to prove it to her. Those present were touched by the scene. The Viscountess was savvy, and when the atmosphere became awkward, she fixed it with a laugh and a joke. Even though the Viscount's family commanded all the attention, Iris and her maids noticed how the girls reacted to the eyeshadow. They really liked the gifts. The Viscountess approached Iris and thanked her for the reception today. She also said that one of her maids had a relative working at the Commandy house, and there was a rumour that Marianne wanted to change the time of the reception to the same time as Miss Forrest's. Iris was shocked. She hadn't even sent out the invitations yet. How did Commandy know when her event would take place? Iris remembered how in her previous life Nera had done the same thing, throwing a party at the same time as her. Since Commandy has a lot of influence, so Iris's evening is on the verge of failing. Iris realised that the Viscountess was taking a huge risk by telling her this. She thanked Viscountess Morty and thought to herself that she should never lose a game in her life. Meanwhile, in the office of the news agency, Danny and Ree also learned that Marianne was having a reception on the same day as Iris. Ree said that if that were the case, Iris would have trouble getting the guests together. Danny thought about how much effort had gone into creating the evening and preparing the gifts. Terrio Opal said he didn't want Iris to get in trouble, but Danny said he couldn't do anything because he didn't know anything about such events. The friends began to discuss what they could do to help Iris, but Count Valencia stood quietly in the corner and remained silent. A few days later, in the evening, Iris and her servants were ready to welcome their guests. Sophie looked at her watch. Iris's evening was about to begin, but no one had come yet. Apparently they had all gone to Lady Commandy's. She had said that if anyone didn't come to her, they would be on her bad side. The first to appear were Lady Rowena and her friends. The other girls said they had only come at Lady Melika's request, but did not think it was the right decision. They said that given Commandy's vindictiveness, it was better to go to her. Most likely her evening would be more fun, for she loves extravagance. The girls were about to leave, but suddenly the lanterns came on and the garden glowed. Iris showed the girls a cake that looked like a log and explained that when the dessert was cut, the cut looked like a tree and the outside looked like tree bark because it was covered with biscuit crumbs. But the guests were whispering about whether there was any point in surprising everyone with a cake if the table was empty. Next to this girl stood Rowena, who thought she was spying on Commandy's behalf. Rowena replied to her that the food could be enjoyed at another table. However, everyone continued to assume that no one was coming. Count Valencia, Lord Morgan, Opal and Danny appeared on the doorstep. Iris was surprised why they had come. Ree was the first to hand Iris a bouquet of flowers. The girls didn't understand how it happened since these guys never show up at social events. Iris was chatting carefree with her friends. The spy girl hurried to report on the guests who had arrived at Iris's event. Marianne burst into tears in front of the guests, screaming that Ian was cruel and never looked in her direction. She could not be calmed down, saying that perhaps the Duke was just looking after his friend's sister. The guests were confused. Each of them wondered if they could leave now, since they had only come because they had promised the lady of the house, Commandy. The guests heard that Duke Valencia, Lord Morgan and Opal were at Iris's party and started to leave there too. Marianne was told that her event was ruined because of her tears. At Forest Manor, the maids couldn't keep up with bringing in chairs from storage. The desserts were running out, and there was commotion all around. Sophie told Iris that her event had been a complete success. Iris replied that she hadn't expected so many people to come. The girls whispered that by coming here, they risked ruining their relationship with Commandy. Iris saw how uncomfortable the guests were when she looked at them. Iris asked Sophie for her opinion on what the problem might be. Sophie said that even after visiting the forest house, people don't plan to donate so as not to ruin the relationship with Commandy. Iris told Sophie to get ready. Viscount Mortar and his wife and the vassals of House Forest arrived for the event. The Viscountess was beautiful and radiant. Many commented that they looked happier than usual. The Viscountess was asked how she had managed to look so beautiful, and she replied that it was all thanks to Miss Forrest's gifts. The Viscountess opened the cosmetics bag and showed the gifts to Iris. Iris offered to teach the girls how to use cosmetics and Lady Rowena to be her model. When Iris gave the masterclass, the other guests had already lined up for her to do their makeup too. Iris predicted that everyone would love it. Iris thought it was really difficult to prepare mica, the main component of eyeshadow, but luckily the other mages had already discovered some chemical minerals, otherwise she wouldn't have even been able to start making cosmetics. Iris presented all the guests with a blush as a gift. Iris also said that if they made additional donations, they could buy makeup base, eyeshadow and lip balm, and all the money raised would go to charity. The cosmetics were in demand, and Iris was pleased that the evening had been a success. At this time, Valencia was accepting invitations to visit from girls from different houses, though he hated attending such events. Danny watched his patience and thought that was the power of love. Iris approached Danny and asked how it was that Valencia and Opal had come to her party. Danny tried to get out of it because if he told the truth, Iris would be angry with Ian. Iris didn't believe the story he had made up about how they were passing by and decided to stop by. Danny had to admit that it was Valenia's idea and he wanted to help her. Iris confronted Ian and said that she didn't like getting that kind of help because he was trying to help her become a solitaire. She reminded him of a similar situation with the Duke of Macartney. Ian admitted that he had gone too far with the deal, but this time he had just decided to come to her party. Ian said that Lady Commandy uses her connections to become a Solia, so Iris can feel free to use hers. Iris clarified which connections he was talking about. Ian leaned in and said he was talking about himself. He said he just wanted to support her. Iris blushed at his words and walked away. A week later, the news agency's office was discussing the news of who had become a Solia. It was Iris, and she had also raised the largest amount of money in the history of the Solia exam at a charity event. Danny suggested that they start selling cosmetics for everyone, as was done with the hot water bottle. The guys discussed how Danny is greedy and obsessed with money. Opal said that he too had done a lot to create cosmetics, and Danny should give Iris time to just enjoy the victory. Meanwhile, Ian sat quietly in the corner, leafing through his correspondence with Iris on his smartphone and cheering for her. Iris arrived to meet Queen Lisa. The Queen said that since Iris would soon be her queen, she should get to know those who were important to the Queen. Miss Forrest first presented the Queen with a box tied with a bow, containing a set of cosmetics. The Queen was pleased with this gift and said that Lady Forrest always does extraordinary things. The Queen asked if Iris was tired from the Solia exam, and if so, when did she have time to make these cosmetics? Iris replied that she wanted to please the Queen and had completely forgotten about being tired. Countess Griffin was also at the meeting, and she sat there thinking that Iris was devious. Later, the Countess said that since Iris would soon be her daughter-in-law, she should have given her a gift, not just the Queen. She had Iris send the same box to her house. Iris calmly replied that if the Countess had put her name on the waiting list, Iris would send her some, but only when she had made new ones, since she had none left now. The Countess asked irritably where the set she had given to the Queen had come from, but Iris replied that the Queen was special. The Countess stood up indignantly, but the Queen told her to calm down, because it was normal that for Solia, the Queen always came first. Countess Griffin could not allow herself to behave like this in the presence of the Queen, but she thought about the fact that Iris was not responding to the marriage proposal, but was also acting arrogant. The Countess was furious, thinking that her precious son was suffering because Iris was avoiding him, but he was so well brought up. And Iris also doesn't thank her future mother-in-law for giving her her favourite son. Once they are married, she will teach Iris some manners. Iris arrived at the Cullenworth household. As it was a respected and influential family, she had to build a strong bond with them. Iris was greeted by the hostess and apologised for the condition of the estate. Iris in turn noted the beautiful music programme and the paintings on the walls. Lady Cullenworth was flattered by the compliments and thought that Iris wasn't really that inexperienced with high society. Looking at her, everyone saw a well-bred girl, and Lady Cullenworth would be pleased to have Iris as her goddaughter. She asked Iris if she had a godmother. Iris replied that she had not yet been able to find a godmother for herself. The other ladies, hearing this, also wanted such an intelligent lady to be their goddaughter. Lady Cullenworth whispered to Iris that she would be glad to have her any time, and she would also like to teach her a thing or two about high society. Iris realised that Cullenworth wanted to be her godmother. She had been Nera's godmother in a previous life, and thanks to Lady Cullenworth, Nera's position in high society had improved considerably. Iris thought about how that wasn't a bad choice, but she had a better option for the role of godmother. At the party, Iris met some people she remembered from her past life. Sons of powerful houses that would soon go bankrupt, humble ladies who would prove to be strong and reliable. Iris thought about how she had a lot of things to do and think about, but even so, she liked to just enjoy life. Iris went out on the balcony. It was snowing. She thought about the fact that the results of the exam had not been announced, but everyone already knew that she was the future Solia. Iris didn't let Nera take the position, besides that many other things happened. Thanks to her 4 friends, what she had experienced in the past seemed like a distant nightmare. Iris heard footsteps behind her. Turning around, she saw Howard. He was drunk. Howard started to say that she had forgotten about him, because she was ignoring his offers to meet. Iris said he was drunk, and it would be better to talk another time. But Howard yelled that she was avoiding him and was seeing someone else. He grabbed her hands. Iris was scared out of her wits and told him to let her go. But Howard continued to hold on and asked why she was avoiding him. He shouted that she was making a fool of him and asked her who she had promised to meet in the park. Iris couldn't get a word out, but she gathered her strength and called loudly for help. Ian appeared immediately and knocked Howard to the ground. Lord Morgan came up and asked Iris if she was all right. Ree thought about how he couldn't find Iris anywhere and went to look, but it turned out to be for good reason. Lady Cullenworth came running up, asking what had happened and if Griffin had molested the girl again. Lady Cullenworth apologised to Duke Valencia, for she must have foreseen that the guests might drink too much. Howard woke up and complained that he had been struck. The Duke clenched his fists in anger and told him to shut up. Howard was approached by his father, slapped in the face, and shouted how dare he humiliate their family like that. Iris and her friends went home. Ree thought at that moment that Ian had managed to restrain himself, for a little more would have had serious consequences. Ian looked like he was ready to kill Howard. Howard returned home in the morning, kicking everything in his path and angry with Iris and Valencia. He shouted that if it weren't for her, he wouldn't be the laughingstock of the world, that he'd get revenge on them for everything. He was caught up by a man in a black cloak, whose face was not visible. Howard was knocked unconscious by the blow. When he woke up, his eyes were blindfolded, and he didn't realise where he was. Howard started screaming that the man who had kidnapped him had no idea who he was dealing with. He was hit in the face again and fell down. Now he was screaming for help. Danny thought about how this man can't even proudly take a punch. He'll probably end up a complete non-entity. When Howard passed out, Danny went over to Anakin and stopped him because he could really kill him. But now Ian came up and started punching him. Danny tried to stop everyone, but no one reacted. Ree told Terrio that it was time to test his new chemical. The 4 men could not be stopped, no matter how hard Danny tried. He shouted that if they wanted revenge, Miss Forrest should do it herself. He continued that if they killed Howard now, not only would the situation get out of control, but Iris's trauma would go nowhere. Those arguments had worked. Anakin turned around, saying he would go to Iris. Danny kept thinking that she wasn't going to be relieved that Howard had been beaten. The others continued to beat him up, suggesting ways to deal with him, such as hanging him naked from a bridge. A few days later, Forest Manor was flooded with gifts from the Queen and the Griffin family. Rita was very angry. She told Iris that Howard was a bastard who had not recovered even after what he had done. She suggested that her mistress break off the engagement, and Rita would personally take the proposal letter back to her. The maids discussed that the gifts would not make Iris forget the horror she had experienced, and naturally there would be no wedding. Iris was also told that the day after that evening, Howard had been found naked by the river. He said he had been kidnapped, but they didn't believe him, thinking he was hallucinating because of the drugs. Anakin came to see Iris. He hadn't been to the manor since his return, but there was still the question of whether he could be Lord Forest. Anakin said he had heard about what had happened, and they were both exhausted. Anakin asked for the engagement letter back from Griffin. Iris replied that it was still early, and she just needed to rest. Anakin was willing to support any decision she made except this one, because that man wouldn't make her happy. He didn't want her to get hurt again. Iris was silent in response. Then Anakin said that if she didn't give up on the wedding, he would just kill Howard. Iris said it wasn't what he thought it was, and he called her too soft-hearted. Iris assured her brother that she was going to get revenge, but cancelling the wedding wasn't enough. Iris said that her revenge story was very long, and she couldn't tell him everything. Anakin asked her to tell her everything, saying he would believe her unconditionally, even if she had lied before. He was sure there was a reason. Then Iris began her story, how she was hit by an arrow, died, and when she woke up she was back at the manor and 20 years old. Iris said that if the White Roses didn't come on their parents' anniversary, it would mean that Anakin died in the Southern War. But this time, Anakin had survived. He thought about the fact that since he had asked Ian to protect her in that life, did that mean he hadn't intervened and Iris had been tortured? He asked his sister if Jan had protected her in a past life. She replied that the information department had helped her when she was accused of treason. They had opened the prison cell door and Iris had been able to escape. She said that Jan died before he could help her. She told her that the current Emperor Claude would choose Jan as his successor. Soon Jan would leave Lowenheim for 10 years. He would leave before her marriage to Howard. Iris said she didn't know why he was leaving. News from the capital was scarce, for it was completely under the control of the vassals. Iris later overhears a conversation in the Griffin house and learns that Ian was trapped by Queen Lisa. She threatened him with someone's life, and to protect everyone the Emperor sent him away. 10 years later, Ian returns more powerful than he was. All these years he has been preparing a sword for revenge. Anakin realized why Ian hadn't prevented the marriage then, and why he hadn't helped when Iris had been charged with treason. She explained that she had been in deep despair, and after the time jump, she had decided to find the four from the Information Bureau right away. Iris said that she would not stop at the revenge she had been seeking for so long. Iris said that these people were cruel in their past lives, and didn't change in this one. They kept committing the same sins. If Iris didn't stop them, all the misfortunes would repeat themselves. Iris said they killed Rita, Sophie, attacked her, and killed her baby. When Iris fell asleep, Anakin left. He met Sophie in the hallway and asked her to take care of his sister. Sophie said she would do what she could and that he should get back to the manor as soon as possible. Anakin thanked her, saying he appreciated her more than she realized. Iris told him that Sophie had once sacrificed her life for her. He walked, remembering how Iris said she begged them not to beat her, admitted her guilt, and didn't even know what she'd done wrong. Nera haunted her, threatening to turn her life into a nightmare. Iris considered herself lucky that Howard had killed her then. A few days later, Anakin persuaded Iris to come to the news agency, saying that she would wither if she sat at home all the time and needed a pick-me-up. Her friends greeted her, asking how she was feeling and telling her the latest news. Iris noted that they were on their usual behaviour. Iris thought maybe it was just a bad dream and nothing had changed. Ian kept writing to her, but she didn't even read the messages from him. It made her feel uncomfortable when she met him. Ree thought that Jan had something planned related to their phones. Danny said that the dress festival was coming up, and Ree asked if Iris was going. She said she hadn't decided yet. At the dress festival, the commoners went out wearing clothes that were given to them by the aristocrats. The value of the gift determined the degree of the giver's feelings. Iris said that on that day everyone shows off their expensive clothes, and she didn't want to keep up that tradition. Danny said that Iris would still have to go, since Duke Oscar and his wife would be there. The Duchy of Vanheit, ruled by Oscar, has the most fertile land. Danny continued that the area was rich in resources and materials to create magical artifacts, such as electric stones. Iris thought that it was like an oil-producing country in another world. They have great potential. Vanheit had established relationships with magical countries based on their resources. They are part of Lowenheim, but are strong enough to become independent at any moment, because they outnumber the Empire in armaments, and at the head of everything is Duke Oscar. Ree added that they can also influence the politics of the state. Everyone would like to have such an ally. Ree kept saying that if Iris got close to Duke Oscar, she would be invincible. In that case, Iris agreed to attend the festival. She was told that the Duke has ruby-coloured eyes, just like Iris, Not many people possess such an eye colour. Ree said that Iris's eyes shine like gems, so there should be no more tears in them. He thought about how he wasn't going to go to the festival, but Iris would need to be accompanied and supported, so Ree decided to go with her to make her feel relaxed. At home, Iris started to pick out an outfit. She had to look perfect. Iris realised that it was a problem because she didn't have a suitable dress. She used to sew and wear her mother's dresses. But the most important thing was that she had to wear white at the festival every year. Iris realised that she would have to spend a lot, but she had to order a new dress. Sophie had to leave before the end of the festival because there were problems with donations from the farms, so Rita had to accompany Iris to the festival. Rita suggested a dress store she had recently spotted. Rita took Iris to the store. She was very enthusiastic. Iris knew that this store was very popular, so all the clothes in the store were fashionable. Rita offered her mistress a dress, but suddenly Iris was called by a man's voice. Rita recognised the man, Viscount Polozit. He was as promiscuous as Howard. Viscount Polozit introduced himself and asked if Lady Forest was getting ready for the festival. Viscount had heard that Howard was hitting on Iris, which meant she had no man. He thought she was a solitaire, also a spellcaster, yet sweet enough. He wished he had a supporter like Iris. The Viscount said the lady should get her dress for the festival as a gift from a man. He asked if he could give her the dress. Iris refused. The man insisted, saying she mustn't slap her face in the dirt, for she would soon be a solia. Rita was angry at how this man kept hitting on her mistress after her rejection. Polozit walked over to Iris and put his arm around her waist. Rita remembered Sophie's words that she should help her mistress during her absence, and she let Rita use any methods to keep Iris out of trouble. Rita tripped the Viscount and he collapsed face down. Iris asked what had happened, to which he replied that he had slipped as he approached her. But what he really realised was that the maid had tripped him. Iris asked Polozit not to approach her without her permission. Victor resented it, thinking that everyone knew that Iris had no money, and that she acted very arrogant and bossy just because she belonged to the Marquis family. She should be happy that he offered her a gift. Aloud, the Viscount continued to insist that Iris choose a dress at his expense, but Iris refused again. Duke Valencia appeared, saying that he himself would buy a dress for Miss Forest. Jan asked to bring the most expensive dresses for this girl. Iris said that this was the most expensive store in town, and the dresses were very expensive, to which Jan replied that he had no shortage of money. Polozit watched what was happening with anger, and thought about the arrogance of the Count. The Viscount tried to stop the Duke by saying that it was indecent to spend such large sums, but Jan replied that he had no right to speak, for he wanted to buy the dress of a lady whom he had seen for the first time. The Viscount left, and Iris asked the Duke how he ended up in this store. Ian replied that he wanted to give Iris a dress. Iris said that if he continued like that, there would be a misunderstanding between them. Jan replied that he was acting the way he wanted to act. Iris said he couldn't understand her behaviour, and Ian said he just loved her. If he formally asked permission to court her, Iris would just run away, and if he hugged and kissed her like he wanted, she just didn't want to see him. Then Jan explained that he wanted to start by having Iris think of him every time she looked at the things he had given her. Iris thought that he always excites her. Her heart couldn't take it anymore, because Ian had confessed his love to her again. She agreed to accept the dress from him. Iris wore her new outfit with a glow. Ian was pleased and ordered the servants to deliver the dress to Forest Manor. They were alone, and Iris realised that this gesture was also a declaration of love. She felt that he wanted to tell her how much he loved her, by the way he looked at her, by his breathing, by the way he spoke. Iris asked him not to do that, but he said he wouldn't wait for permission to love her. Iris asked him to forget about it as soon as possible, and she, in turn, would also try to become forgotten. Thanking him for the gift, Iris said goodbye and left. Ian looked after her, thinking that he would never be able to understand her.